All right, everybody. How you doing? It's News Debate. I am Lee, live over on Twitter Spaces. Going to get started over on Stereo, live on twitch.tv/NEWZ Debates, live on rumble.com/user/NEWZ Debates, live now over on Instagram.com/ you guessed it, NEWZ Debates. Tested out Instagram last time and wanted to see what it was like. Seems to be working well. And gonna keep doing it. I'm getting some sound, I think, over on stereo. Let me take a check real quick. There it is. Looks like we had some kind of digital echo over there. Hey, this is what happens when you're simulcasting out the wazoo. Great to have everybody with me. We got a good amount of people over on Twitter Spaces. Want to say hi to Patrice, patreon.com/NEWZ debate supporter Patrice. Also say hello to our friend and Patreon supporter to the north, Glenn, joining us over on Twitter Spaces. And can't keep a good woman down. Better Call Sal over in Ireland. She shared on the show recently that she had a stroke. She let me know she's back home now from the hospital, so we'll check in with her in a moment. But Patrice and Glenn, let's check in with you guys first. How are you doing?
Okay, I'll go first. I was being Canadian and like trying to let Patrice go first, but it didn't seem like that was going to happen. I'm good. How are you, Lee?
Yeah, I'm surprisingly okay. It's a hot take show, so we'll probably eventually talk about President Trump. I gotta say, he's causing a lot of havoc in a lot of people's lives, but gotta say he's getting a lot of stuff done that I kind of agree with a few things. So we'll talk about that. I'm not as bad as I could be. And I'm not sure if we're going to hear from Patrice or not. She's a speaker right now, but I'm not sure if she can throw in. Patrice, throw in at any time if you can. Otherwise, let's jump over and hear from Better Call Sal. How you doing, Sal?
Hey Lee. Hey guys. Yeah, I'm doing really well. I came home Friday. And I was just so ecstatic to be home. I just wanted to be home. And then of course did too much on Saturday and was very sleepy yesterday and Sunday. But yeah, I'm just grateful to be home. I'm really, really grateful to be home. It's made all the difference. You know yourself, you want your own bed, you want your own bits around you, you want. Yeah, so it is great to be home.
So on the last show, Better Call Sal, so I guess about a week ago, you sounded noticeably different, and I could believe that. Oh yes, you had a stroke. Right now, I can't tell. You sound rather normal. How do you feel?
At this time of the day, yes, I do feel rather normal. It's first thing in the morning. So my entire left side, first thing in the morning, is sore. It's achy, and my voice is nowhere near as clear. But as the day goes on, I get better and stronger. It's just, I suppose, my muscles are resting for so long. But I went to see my own GP today, and he said no, nothing compared to what he saw last Friday. He was very pleased with me because he was the first port of call last Friday. Um, and yeah, and
So
yeah,
you
I had.
mentioned the side of your body. I want to come
Yeah.
back to that because that's something when they talk about the signs of a stroke or the signs of a heart
Mhm.
attack is that it's often one side of your body not so great. But you mentioned your general practitioner, or as you Irish people say, GP. Um, I wonder if you're someone's doctor, your family doctor that is supposed to know you and care about you and give you good advice, and then you have a stroke. Is that like a failure of your GP? Is this something he should have been, telling you how to avoid? Like, how does your GP approach, oh, you had something that I guess in some ways is somewhat preventable? How did that conversation go?
Um, no, I don't think so. I mean, because I get my blood checked every 3 months anyway in my GP. But a stroke is something that you can't pre-predict. Um, and
But as you mentioned on last week's show, you were like, "Hey, everybody, take that
yeah,
small
the baby.
aspirin." But you weren't taking that, right? So were you not at risk for a stroke? Is that
N-
something you
No,
only take
no,
after a stroke?
no. I mean, there is no history of stroke in my family, none. So it's not something that was what being watched for. My heart is. Both my brothers have. Well, they don't both have heart issues, but they are monitored a lot closer than I am because we have heart disease in our family. But my heart has always come out on tops.
So actually, I guess based on your family history, you were more likely to have a heart attack than a stroke.
Yeah, yeah. And Lee, when I did have I think it was brought on by stress. I had a very stressful day the day before. Um,
Well, you have
and
been out in your car a lot because Ireland's
yeah,
lost power because of a storm, right? So you're telling me something more stressful than living out in your
yeah.
car happened to you one day?
The day before, my ex-husband. Not really in the mood to go into it in a recorded space, but
So you say ex-husband, but he was your ex before. You didn't become exes a
no,
couple
no,
days
no,
ago?
no, no, no. We're still legally married, and I'm living in the family home.
Oh, okay, so he's not
And
your ex-husband.
yes, and he
Wow.
went looking for my home, and I got a little bit
Ugh.
too. And yeah, I
So
think it was a
so
stress.
without going into too many details, the day before you had a stroke, you found
Mm-hmm.
out that the man you're not with, but is still technically your husband, he was
Mm-hmm.
looking for Better Call Sal, and somehow that got back to you, and so you were a
Mm-hmm.
little stressed out.
Mm-hmm. Very stressed out. Very, very stressed out. And it was literally the next morning I had my stroke.
Now, when
Um,
you're in the hospital and you're recovering, and part of your body is not as good as the other part, the half that you were talking about, which is very
mm-hmm.
common. And they were like, "You're still with us. Here's what we're gonna do, and here's what you have to do now as a stroke survivor." Did they buy your "I'm healthy, I'm just stressed out," or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by TM's Lee. Um,
Yes. Oh, DMs. I'm sorry. Oh, I hope your husband. I
no,
found you digitally. Better call Sal. I'm coming after you.
no, he can't find me here. Nobody I know can find me here, other than the people I know have gotten to know on the platform.
That's the way
Um,
it should be. I'm not sure if you've heard me say it, but I often say I have a general policy about meeting people in person because when I do, you'll find my head one location and my body another location. Hey, if you want to do it, it's up to you, but that's just my general thing, and I encourage everybody else. Okay, so you're getting a lot of DMs. My question was, when you have a stroke like you did, and then you try to tell the people in the hospital, hey, I had a bad day. I was really stressed out. Do they
yeah.
believe you? Or are they like,
Um,
well, okay, maybe you were, but that's not why you had a stroke?
no, it's pretty much the unit that I was in Galway is the best stroke unit in the country. Because I live in in the well, maybe I suppose no, Beaumont would be a bigger stroke unit, but they take brain injuries. And if you have a really bad stroke, then it's classed as a brain injury. And so you go there, but the one in Galway, the stroke units in Galway have the best people in the country, and I mean people from all over the world come because it's a teaching hospital. People come from all over the world to work in that department. Um, so yeah, it's pretty much accepted that when you look at my medical history and my life story, that it is I I get sick when I'm stressed. Um,
And
and
so these high level stroke doctors, they were agreeing with you. They weren't
yeah,
talking about genetics
that
or health or
no,
lifestyle. They were like, you had a
no.
bad
I
day.
mean, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fit, Lee. I don't drink
I
to
I,
excess.
I'm sure that's all the case, but like the doctors, they agreed with you. I'm just trying to make sure we're on
Yeah,
the same page. They said
yeah, yeah.
you had a stress
Up
induced stroke.
up to 60% of they reckon up to 60% of my stroke was stress induced.
So then is the big you come home, like you said, you're in your own bed. I love you said you want to be around your bits. Might be an
My bit,
Irish expression. Where are my
yeah, it's
bits?
like
God damn it.
my
I want
own
to see my bits.
bit.
So
I
i-
wear, I
is the
wear
big
everything.
thing you're doing right now is to just not be stressed out?
Yeah,
And how do you do
and
that?
I talk to a friend a lot, um, a new friend. Um,
Is it a guy friend? New guy friend?
it is a guy friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
We
That
we got
helps.
we got Glenn joining us over on Twitter Spaces right now. Just a coincidence? I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. Okay, so you're talking with guy friend. You're trying to
Yes,
stay
I am
stress
stress
free.
free. Yeah, and he's helped me a lot. And he was incredible during sorry, DMs keep flashing up. He was incredible when I was in hospital. He talked me down so many times because I just wanted to come home. I didn't want to be sick. I didn't want to be in hospital. And yeah, he talked me down off a ledge more than once.
Sounds like a good friend. Great job, Glenn. Doing a great job.
Oh
So before you got to the hospital, uh, were you awake? Do you remember having a stroke? Or do you just wake up in the hospital and you're told you had a stroke?
no. So that Friday morning I'd gone back to bed. I'd gotten up at about 8 o'clock. I talked to my dogs, I let them out, I gave them something to eat. And I'd been up late the night before. I think I was in a space or talking to a guy. Um, and I went back to bed because I sing a lot as well at home, sing and dance.
You
So I
got up
was
in the
moving.
morning and you did some things and you're like, well, I'm a little tired from singing and dancing. Went back to sleep.
Went back to bed. I went back to bed and I was asleep between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock. And the same guy rang me, and he wasn't. I thought it was just a delay in the connection because I thought I was really, really slurring. You know, when you're drunk and you know you're drunk and you're trying to act
Lee, you
sober.
sound like a guy who's been in this position a few times. You know when you're drunk, but you're trying to get people to think you're not drunk. Okay, so you were talking to Glenn. Sorry, you were talking to some guy that you really like, and you thought there was a connection problem. Something was off.
Yeah,
Didn't feel right.
yeah. And then he went and I went over to a friend's house and I said, because I felt like I was drunk. It felt like I was drunk and it
Whoa,
was
whoa,
weird.
whoa. Okay. So you got up and moved around. It felt like
Yeah,
you were drunk it's like noon, and you're like, well, I'm Irish, but I'm not that Irish. And then so you go over
Not
to a
that
friend's
Irish.
house
Yeah.
and you're
Well,
able to get around.
first of all, I struggled putting down the handbrake because we drive on the right side of the car, on the right side of the road. But no, we drive on the right side of the car, on the left side of the road. I struggled to get the handbrake down with my left hand. So I thought that maybe I slept on it funny. Maybe it was
You know
any.
what? I could imagine, because I have woken up a few times and like my hand didn't work for a little bit of time
Yeah,
because I slept on it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that kind of numb feeling. It's a numb feeling, and
So you got in the car and then and drove, or you got in the car and couldn't get the brake down? That's where we are right
I
now?
couldn't get. I couldn't originally get the handbrake down, so I climbed out of the car, put the handbrake down with my right hand, and said, "Come on, to fuck, Sarah,
Oh,
come on,
okay, because you were having the
hop
half of
on."
your body problem, so you got out of
Yes,
the car, used the good half of your body, got
yes,
the
and then
handbrake
got back
down, and then drove?
and then drove. I drove over to my
Wow.
friend. I walked into her house and said, "I think I'm having a stroke," joking, and next thing she proceeded to keep a really good eye on me. I was slurring. I was talking about her dog going to the vet, and she said, and I said to her, I said, "Do dogs have allergies?" And what she heard me say is dogs allergies. So I was really slurring my words. And
You
then
know,
when I went back,
that movie Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio, have you seen
yes,
that, Better Call Saul?
yes,
So
yes,
there's
yes,
the
yes, yes.
scene where he thinks he gets in his car and
And does
goes
a great job.
somewhere, and then
Yeah,
in reality, he does get in his car and goes somewhere, but he's really fucked up, and
it's the
so
Quaaludes, the
yeah,
last of the 1980s Quaaludes.
yeah, by the time he gets there, his car is all tore up, he's, like,
Hmm.
drooling and, like,
Yeah.
crawling places and stuff, so that's what you sorta had, is you think you're
No, I
getting
wasn't
there,
that
and
wasn't quite
not
Theo.
not Leonardo DiCaprio bad, but you feel like something's a bit off, and then
Yeah,
you get there and you're talking and stuff. You can tell something's a bit off, but you feel like you're at a level, and it turns out you're not, because to the person who's around you, you clearly have something going on more than you slept on your arm or something like that.
yeah, yeah. And I then rang my doctor's surgery, and I explained my um, condition, that I was slurring and my left side. At that stage, my leg was gone as well. Explained that, but again, put it off that I maybe slept weird. And um, yeah, I rang my doctor's surgery, and they said, "Okay, can you come in straight away?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." Then got back into the car, drove
Time
to my
out, time
doctor's
out,
surgery.
time out, time out. So you call the doctor. Really quickly, it's News Debate. I'm Lee. We're having a hot take show. We'll talk about news over on stereo. I have a poll about, hey, I think Donald Trump's doing a good job, and Donald Trump's doing a bad job. But we're catching up with a friend of the show, Better Call Sal, in Ireland. Had a stroke recently. So you call the doctor and you say, I think I might have had a stroke. Half of my body's numb. And they say, okay, well, wow, well, that sounds serious. Do you got your car keys with you? Could you go jump in the car and drive on over here? They really asked you to drive to them.
N- No, no. What? I didn't say I had a stroke. I said I described my symptoms because I wasn't prepared or ready to say the word stroke.
But did those symptoms include things that are hallmarks of someone who just had a stroke? Like half my body is a little bad and I'm slurring my speech. I feel a little drunk. Were those the symptoms?
Yeah, but I hadn't made an excuse for them.
But you told them those were the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then
They
their
said, "Can
reaction
you get
was,
in?
okay, well,
Can you
you
get in?
you got
It
those
was
car
more,
keys on
can you
you?
get
Why
in?"
don't you drive down
No,
here?
they didn't. No, Anna didn't say that. Anna was kind of, "Can you get in? Can you find somebody?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fine." And she said, "Well, no." She said, "Well, find somebody that'll bring you in." And I thought I'm fine. Um, and you know what? I've driven that road. That drives that road blindfolded. But yeah. So
Okay.
I went in
You know
and
what, officer? I may have been caught driving under the influence, but I could drive that road with my eyes closed. Okay, okay. So the situation's getting. I'm surprised things didn't get even worse than you telling me I survived a stroke. I feel like there could have been an accident here.
there
So
probably
sorry.
could have
Do
been,
I
but it was.
understand correctly? Did you drive? Did your friend drive you to the hospital?
I drove. No, 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 no. I rang an ambulance.
Okay, okay. So then an ambulance came to get you at your friend's house, and then ambulance took you to the hospital.
Yes,
And
lights and
was that
sirens and the
covered
whole lot.
as an Irish person who has the national health care? Did you have to pay for the ambulance at all? I asked because I think I've been told on the show previously that in Canada, you have to pay for an ambulance, but you don't have to pay for a helicopter. So if you're so bad off, you got to get a helicopter, that's fine. You don't got to pay for it. But if you got an ambulance, you gotta pay a little bit of money. What's it like for you?
I did not pay a single solitary cent.
Nice. Ireland, everybody.
I saw my doctor. Actually, I might owe him 50 quid. I don't know. Saw my doctor, was picked up in an ambulance by two paramedics. When I got to the hospital, I was brought to the trauma door with 6 bodies inside the door because the paramedic called the trauma unit when we
Oh,
were
okay.
on.
Sorry. So like you didn't go in the morgue entrance or something. You mean 6
No,
people
went
were
in
in the door
the back.
waiting for you.
The back, yeah, the back of our emergency department is where they bring you straight into resuscitation, which is the ICU of our emergency room.
Okay, so you went to like the
Uh,
emergency part of the emergency room. You're still
yes,
conscious this entire time. You don't remember specific moments that you had this stroke, but you remember very quickly afterwards noticing
I
things were
remember. I
off.
remember everything. Yeah, I
And
had the
then,
stroke between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock
yeah, while you were taking a nap, yep. And then, so
while I
you
was
get to
taking
the
a nap.
hospital and they start doing tests. They figure out you had a stroke. Is that very clear really quickly? We'll get to a message on stereo in a moment. Stay with us. Please continue, Better Call Sal.
Um, well, once I got into the hospital, all 6 people had a job to do. They had to give me an ECG to trace my heart to make sure it wasn't my heart, rule out my heart first. And I knew that it wasn't my heart because they had a trace on me in the ambulance. And because of my father, I understand all that. I understand why they do that. Um, and so I had bloods taken. I had to answer questions. I had to, simple questions from what age am I to um, how many
Alphabet
children I have.
backwards. That's a strong drunk driving
No,
question in the US.
I wouldn't. That came down the line. That was when they were trying to clear me to go home. I got those kind of questions. Yeah, what day of the week it is? Who's our president? What day it is? Things like that. Meanwhile, somebody's taking blood out of my arm. Somebody else is putting an ECG on me. Somebody else is checking my reflexes on my foot. And within about 10 to 15 minutes, I was on the trolley going back to the CAT scan. So I had 2 CAT scans that rules out blockage somewhere in my veins. In like, is it heading towards my lung or my heart? So I had an ordinary CAT scan, and then the one with the dye. Do you know, like it's like an angiogram?
I've heard
Uh,
about it. Never had one, but they gave you a
yeah,
normal thing, and then they injected
and
something
then
in you and did it again.
and then they inject you with dye, and then bloods come back. And it wasn't until about 10 o'clock that night the first time stroke was mentioned. And I said, well, if it
Really?
wasn't,
Okay.
yeah,
So I guess they were looking at some other things, and then crossing them off, and like it's not this, and then
it
by the end of the
crossed-
night, stroke.
well, not really. I didn't really get the stroke diagnosis until Wednesday morning when I had my MRI. It
So even
wasn't until,
longer. Okay. So
yeah,
then, so to wrap this all up in a bow, come Wednesday, so it's been nearly 24 hours since you had your stroke moments.
hmm
That's what they're zeroing in on. You have had a stroke.
yeah, well, yeah, but I think we all kind of knew I was having a stroke. It was just a matter of having it confirmed. So I was being treated as a stroke patient from the second I was in there. I mean, the first thing they did was give me
So
aspirin.
when you say confirmed, is there like some test or some sort of physical uh, uh, marker that they can find in some sort of scan that says, okay, magic bullet, this is the stroke right here, confirmation?
Yeah. Yeah, that's your MRI. You can see the what's left of whatever popped in my head. You can see it. You can see what's left in there. And the MRI will, and it just depends on where it pops, because what the baby aspirin does is thins your blood, so it breaks it down. But it's easily the number one easiest way of preventing a stroke is taking a baby aspirin. Now, don't take one every day because that's not good for your blood.
So
Uh,
that's what they have you on now, is some regiment of baby aspirin, but that's because as a stroke survivor, are you likely to have another stroke?
no, you are the 1 in 20 people have a a second stroke within 5 days. So that's
Okay.
why
So now
you'll.
thinning your blood, trying to
Yeah.
prevent that from happening, and then for the rest of your life, hopefully very long and very awesome with you and your guy friend, um, is there also an increased risk, or is it once you
Uh,
get a certain amount of days out, it goes back to like normal risk of a stroke for anybody?
yeah, within 3 months. So my doctor will take bloods every month from me for the next 3 months. Because there's two different kinds. There is a blood clot or a cholesterol clot. And even though my cholesterol wasn't too high, it could shift. Yeah, mine was a blood clot. But luckily, I'm alive. I'm happy. I'm content. I'm um
You're surrounded by all your bits. We talked about how important it
my
is
bits,
for you to be
my
surrounded
bits.
by your bits at home.
Yeah, my bits. You know your own bits. You just like you know where your coffee cup is. You
When
know where
you
your.
when you tell me my bits, I feel like those are my testicles. So I feel like bits means a little bit something for a guy here versus a little bit different than you. But okay, your things. I'm surrounded by my things.
My
Okay,
things. Yes,
that's great.
yes,
That's
and my
awesome.
puppy dog, and my cat, and
And
you
then final thing,
know.
I wanna jump over to stereo. I'm not sure if those messages are related to this discussion or to our general news debate, hot topics discussion, or rather hot takes discussion. But you mentioned the baby aspirin. So did you tell me previously last week? Are you taking it once a week?
No, I'm taking 75 milligrams of aspirin every day.
Oh, okay.
what's important is to keep my blood thin, which is why I have to avoid my cat like the plague,
Yeah,
because
because if you get scratched or if you get, I don't know,
if I
shot
get,
like you're in the United States or
yeah,
something, you're gonna bleed out on that
I
aspirin.
bleed out. Yeah, my blood is very, very thin.
And is that, you mentioned after 3 months, so is that something you're gonna be on for the short term, or is that something they would recommend for the long term since you did have a
No,
stroke?
I think what will happen is that I was giving a prescription from the hospital that I filled on Saturday. And yeah, I have 14 days of 75 milligrams, and then I drop to, I think it's 25 milligrams every second day.
Okay, so
But it
very
all
drop,
depends
yeah.
on how my it all depends on how my bloods come back.
Yep, because you're gonna get your blood checked regularly, and then okay, all right. So
Yeah.
we'll hear more on this, but then just to wrap this up for the time being, how would you say you are versus before? So if before 2 weeks ago was 100%, where are you at generally now?
Well, in fairness, mentally, I'm probably at 99%. It was a real shock, and I am incredibly grateful to be alive. Incredibly grateful. I feel like I've been given a second chance. Physically, I would have thought maybe 55, 60%. Yeah, I took a long walk on Saturday morning. I shouldn't have. I overdid it. I'm sleeping a
Are you
lot
making
more,
sure
and
that you have your cell phone with you at all times in case something
all
happens?
times. Yeah, all times. Yeah. And they're I have a team coming out. I have a team of people coming out: occupational therapist, speech therapist, physiotherapist, and social worker. Coming out on Friday.
Jesus, Ireland, everybody. National health
Mm-hmm.
care.
Mm-hmm.
That
I
seems like a
reckon.
lot more than you need, but all right, I'm glad you got it.
I reckon 7 nights in the hospital, 2 CAT scans, an MRI, and 6 rounds of blood would set me back around €300,000.
Oh yeah,
If I
I
was in
have no idea, but it would not be cheap. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I got it all for free. And then there's the aftercare.
Yeah, all those people come visiting you. The real problem in
Yeah,
the United States is not only just people who don't have health insurance, so they pay in theory the
yeah,
largest fee because there's no discounts. Your insurance always has discounts, they force prices. But even if
yeah,
you have insurance, going through something like that can be really expensive because you have out of pocket expenses, you have deductibles, you have max payouts. So it's like, um, I'm trying to think of an analog here. It's like getting in a car accident in the US. I don't know what it's like in Ireland. In the US, unless you have full 100% everything coverage, which is really expensive. So most people don't have that. You got to look at, well, what was the damage and how expensive was the car to begin with? How long ago did you, like, it's just all this formula and all these claims. Healthcare is about the same thing in the United States. And that's if you're lucky enough to have medical coverage. So yes, that's awesome. Better Call Saul. Stay with us. It's News to Bit IMA. Great to hear things are going really well. Next in line over on Twitter Spaces will be Glenn. He's my Patreon supporter, patreon.com/NEWZ debate if he has a hot take. Patrice as well, if she has one. And then after that, we'll go with Nick. But first, let's go over to Stereo. I don't have any transcripts of these messages, but they came in while we were talking about our friend Better Call Saul's stroke story. A successful, it's a success stroke story. She's doing very, very well. And she'll continue to probably be doing even better. So let's jump over here on Stereo and hear from Jex, followed by Chris.
I think for the most part, I think Trump's doing a pretty decent job. I think that The Gaza stuff, I'm not really sure about that. I think the Greenland stuff, a lot of people in Greenland definitely do want to be American. You know, there's a good amount of them that do want that. So that'd be an interesting sort of deal to be made if that actually was to go through. We get a lot of resources, a lot of access to oil, something like that. Actually, be on par with, potentially the Scandinavian countries or like Norway, for example, with how they get oil from the Arctic region. But anyway, I think that the USAID stuff, that to me, like that's actually really amazing. The amount of just sheer corruption that has been going on with that stuff, and just the amount of waste is just it is just insane. Like day after day, information after information coming out about that's crazy. It's just I didn't know that our money was going to that much nonsense all around the world. And it's really sad to see that there's some folks. Now, me, I mean, I consider myself to be relatively moderate. I look at stuff the best that I can. Issue after issue. But I think that when it comes to the idea of being able to go through all these different departments and then determine where the waste is and stuff like that, remove government employees that have been there for a long time that really should have been fired. Me myself, I am in government, and I do recognize that the waste and the abuse and the unnecessary, the unreasonable amount of people that are on the payroll that really shouldn't be, that actually should have been fired. It's just it is really a big deal. And so to be able to see when it comes to the USAID stuff and other different entities that are putting out money, of how you have people that are generally very upset about it when it should be a nonpartisan issue to stop nonsensical spending across the world. In my opinion, I just don't really get why people are really upset about it for that much. And there's a lot of people that are really, like I was saying a minute ago, very upset about us looking into USAID. We're starting to see that all these different institutions that are receiving money that really, it's very questionable as to why they're receiving money. They really shouldn't be receiving money. I think most Americans would agree that they really shouldn't be receiving, millions and millions of dollars of, taxpayer dollars. And so the interesting thing is that you have a lot of people are saying that Trump cannot, I mean, yes, it's true that Trump cannot completely dissolve it. Congress has to, because it was ultimately, signed into law by Congress. However, USA, and this is what a lot of people don't get, USAID is, it is in line with Homeland Security, I believe. Yeah, Department of Homeland Security, which it falls under the executive branch, which is why Trump does have the legal authority to suspend funds and fire people. So a lot of people are trying to say that he can't, but I don't know why they're saying that.
All right. Thank you to Jex for all the messages. Definitely recognize that voice. Appreciate you. I got a couple of questions. So you mentioned something like the USAID or just our international spending that Trump is trying to get rid of. A lot of bad stuff is coming out about that. I haven't been seeing that reported. So certainly I've been seeing reasons why they're saying they need to get rid of it. And I've been seeing discussions about should we be spending this money on the foreign world rather than the tens of thousands of, I think more I think, is it something like 500,000 people in the US are homeless? I mean, the tens of millions of Americans who don't have health insurance. So I've been seeing those discussions, but I've yet to see really solid, like, this is completely wasteful and it's not a good way to use the money the way that you described. So if you can give me any sort of direction on that, you're over on stereo, so I'm not asking for a link, but if you can give me something specific, I could look that up. I've not seen anything like that. So that's a head scratcher. I like your question about, well, does Trump have the legal authority to get rid of it? And that's really interesting. So maybe technically he can't dismantle USAID, but if he is in charge of what they're doing from a human resources standpoint, it's hard to operate if no one works for USAID. So that might be one of these legal loopholes where previously up to this point, precedent has prevented anyone from doing anything like this. But because Trump doesn't care about that, and I support him not caring about that, I wish that Democrats would act like Trump. Can you imagine what we would have accomplished if Barack Obama acted like Trump, if Joe Biden acted like Trump, and they just did whatever they wanted to do? So if there's a way for him to do this in a legal way, but it's not technically dismantling USAID, it's just sort of killing off its workforce. Okay, well, he has shown that when you want to do something, you have to really want to do it. And that's the problem with Democrats, is we don't fight for things like Republicans do. So I like your comments there. Something I think you're completely wrong about. You said a lot of people in Greenland want to be Americans. I have seen the exact opposite of that. Off the top of my head, I've seen that 85% of people in Greenland or higher want to have nothing to do with the United States. So I think just factually what you said is completely inaccurate. If you misspoke and want to rephrase that, I mean, it's not zero people in Greenland, but I mean, try to think about anything in the United States where 85% of people agree. It would have to be pretty basic stuff. So it's very basic in Greenland that they do not want to be part of the United States. So dead wrong on that. Maybe you can give me some clarification, but I'm a liar pants on fire. I'm calling you out on that one. Okay, it's News Debate IMA. We'll go back over to stereo and hear from Christopher and maybe some more messages in a moment. But Nick has been waiting patiently over on Twitter Spaces. We also have Glenn and Patrice. So Glenn or Patrice, do you guys have a hot take? You guys are my supporters over on patreon.com/NEWZ debates. So we'll go first with you, then we'll go with Nick, and also Nicole, a little loony, that's the name, over on Twitter has also tweeted a hot take. So you're in the line as well. Glenn or Patrice, do you guys have something right now?
Oh, actually, I have a couple hot takes, Lee. So the one you're not going to believe. Me, a renowned vodka drinker, is mostly giving up drinking vodka. I've had like 4 ounces of vodka in like 2 weeks. I've also cut out pasta out of my diet.
So is this like an anti-Russia thing? Like you just can no longer support Russia? It's invaded Ukraine and you just, I can't drink that stuff anymore. Why the weaning off of the vodka?
Well, actually, the vodka was locally produced, Lee. So, you know, I was already buying local. Like it wasn't, so it had nothing to do with anything outside of Canada. No, it's like I started working out and then doing that drunk just wasn't a good idea. So I stopped drinking so I could work out more. I started taking that a little more seriously instead. Because it's like a healthy addiction. It's one of the few addictions that you can have that's really not going to hurt you unless you're a complete idiot. And I'm not that. So that's good. I also have one other hot take, Lee.
So is that a hot take that you're just saying no to booze and you think more people should
I mean, it's
should agree with
surprising that
that?
I'm not drinking. No, I just thought it was surprising that it's a hot take because I drank so much that I would actually just stop. You know, I thought it was a spicy.
Glenn is such a user of alcohol, a drinker of alcohol, that the entire nation of Canada is stunned that he is sort of giving it up. Okay, that's a hot take. Maybe that's a hot take up in the 51st state of Canada. Okay.
I also have another hot take. I'm guilty of being that friend in Sal's life, and thank you for calling me a good friend. I appreciate it.
So sorry, did you say you're guilty of being a friend who sells something? I missed that.
Sal, better call Sal. Yeah.
Oh,
Remember
you're
you
guilty of being a very good friend of Better Call Saul.
We'll call it that, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I
See,
think that
I was just making that up. I was just like, hey, Glenn's in the room. But okay. There is when a Canadian man gives up alcohol, I guess that is really attractive to an Irish woman. Is that surrounded by men in Ireland who have not made that choice, so she's attracted?
he was on the verge of doing that anyway, I think. But yeah, Lee, we met here, for God's sake.
You know, the news debate has been a lot of things. we've been accused of being a lot of things. I've been accused of being a lot of things. A matchmaker was never one of them. So hey, Valentine's Day is not too far around the corner, guys. This is really fascinating and delightful. So okay, sometimes I make jokes and they turn out to be true. Hot diggity damn. I think Patrice is just joining us as a listener for today's show, but she is a speaker. So Patrice, if you'd like to jump in at any time, please do. Nicole, thanks for the link. I'm trying to dig that up right now. It's about the Megan Boswell trial. It's not something I'm aware of, so I'm trying to pull up a story on that right now. But Nick, you have been waiting patiently, and your hot take is about apparently a lot of lost records related to the JFK assassination have been located. And that is an update on previously Donald Trump, I think, signed an executive order to release, I don't know if all is the correct term, but a lot of records related to the JFK and RFK assassinations. Of course, RFK Jr. is trying to be the head of Health and Human Services. He was an independent candidate for the presidency, gave that up, supported Trump, and now some people are really scared that he's going to be in charge of some medical related things in the United States. But whatever you think about him, he is, directly connected to his father and his uncle, and they were both assassinated, especially JFK. There's a lot of conspiracy stuff, but RFK as well. And so the idea of getting some of those records released, I think everybody is kind of intrigued by that. But now apparently they found even more of these records that were kind of lost to history. So Nick, you're a speaker over on Twitter. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, so when Trump signed the executive order, he said that all of it would be 100% declassified. And when you look at the fine print notes on the executive order, so it would say that the agency that they work for, but for example, if John Smith was ordered by the CIA to shoot JFK, they would turn it into like Agent X or Agent Y. It would still say the agency and it was the government order, for example. But it would do that to protect their surviving families against retribution. But that didn't happen. Day 15 was Saturday. So today, the 11th, they said that there are 2,000 new files, new documents, 2,000 new documents that were never turned over to the Warren Commission, which was the most comprehensive, fully audit of the JFK assassination that ever happened. 2,000 new documents that were never turned over. They've had them the whole time. Even then, they didn't turn them over. And that's just
really quickly. Let's jump in with some reporting, and then we'll go back to your hot take. I like this. This one was not on my radar. I saw a couple of headlines about it and didn't look any further. So thank you for bringing this up. This is from 2 weeks ago from CBS News. President Trump announced he'll declassify any remaining files, so you think that would mean all, from the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert F. Kennedy, as well as Martin Luther King Jr. I don't remember that third one, so I'm glad that has reminded me here. That was an executive order. The order requires the Director of National Intelligence and Attorney General. At that time, neither had been confirmed. I believe we now have, is it Pam Bondi, the blonde lady? She's the Attorney General. But what's her name? Former Democrat, has the nice streak of white in her hair. She, I think, still is not the head of national intelligence yet, but whatever. Order the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General to spend the next 15 days coming up with a plan to release the JFK files, then 45 days to come up with plans to release all of the RFK and MLK files. It says a plan. That wording specifically is different than release. So if it's 15 days to come up with a plan, the plan could say, well, we'll release them 30 days from now. So that's a little confusing there. But it looks like JFK is the first one, and then after that, RFK and MLK are part of the second group. Okay, so that's from CBS News. Then we're over on CNN. This is the update that is Nick's hot take. The FBI has discovered about 2,400 new records related to the assassination of President JFK from a new record search following that executive order from President Trump. The FBI says that it performed a new search of records. It was newly inventoried and digitized records that were previously unrecognized as related to the JFK assassination case file. The statement does not provide any additional information about what the records might say, just that there are additional records. Since 2020, the FBI began collecting closed case paper files from FBI field offices around the country to be housed in its central records complex in Virginia. The FBI says it can now move more quickly to comb through and find records as a result of this more comprehensive inventory and technologic advances in automating its record keeping processes. So if anyone's ever seen, the Indiana Jones films, there's this scene where, is it the Lost Ark? They put it in a warehouse and it's just like lost in this sea of other gems that are kept in this warehouse. That's a real problem with governments around the world, is that even stuff that's really important, you put it somewhere and maybe we even agree that it should be kept and it should not be public and it needs to be kept under wraps. Well, the people who put it there, they're going to retire and they're going to die. And as more and more people get replaced, even if we change our minds and we say, oh, this needs to go public, you start forgetting what's there. And then you just have like buildings that burn down and things get combined and no one knows what's inside of all these things. So this is something that really does happen. And the idea of digitizing information, even if you keep the original files, that is something that really does prevent that sort of thing from happening. It doesn't mean we're going to find out about it, but at least in theory, it's easier to track and keep a list of what you actually have in these warehouses. During Trump's first term, the U.S. government released more than 2,800 records related to JFK's assassination to comply with a 1992 law that mandated the documents' release. However, roughly 300 files were classified due to concerns for U.S. national security, law enforcement, and foreign relations. And then there was another document released in 2018. In 2023, the Biden administration said the National Archives had concluded its review of the classified JFK assassination documents, with 99% of the records having been publicly released. Okay. So it sounded like you were talking about some things that I'm not seeing here in the reporting, Nick, and that's fine. Maybe there's other details that aren't in here, but the way I'm seeing this is that we've had multiple JFK document releases, and up until the last president, Biden, it was apparently, unless you don't believe it, the vast majority of information, 99%, had been released, and the stuff that was not being released was being kept hidden for, apparently, according to the government, really important concerns. But now, I guess you would say that's one group of documents we can't look at. They're saying there are 2,400 new records that have been found, I guess, that are on top of the 1% that we knew existed, but we just were not getting. I guess that's a way you can read this, is that they lost some of these documents. Is this how you read this story, Nick?
So So you have 100 pages, right, of documents, and you have the ability to redact or just black out certain bits of information. So if you're going for 100%, you need all 100 pages. And if you redact 20% of the information available on each page, you can still release all 100 pages and not have it be truly honest. So if there's any redactions, any blackouts, any
That's
stopping
not
the people from
that's
knowing the
not what
truth.
that's not what this is saying though. So unless you show me something that says that, I'm gonna go ahead and say that's not what's happening here. So it looks like unless there's a very specific piece of information like someone's name that's redacted to, privacy or whatever, it looks like the records that have been released are released, and then they just have records that were not released, like 1%, but maybe that could be a lot because you can imagine there's a lot of records about JFK, the assassination. And then now they have 2,400 new records, but it doesn't say what that means. Does 2,400 new records mean 2,400 pages? Does that mean 2,400 items that could be multiple pages each?
2,400 pages, 2,400 pages total. And when they say they release them, the cumulative sum of 99% of JFK, if you go to any JFK, and I've studied this for years, when you look at it, they're like, well, here is all the information you asked for, and it's still blacked out. They can say they released it, but it's still blacked out. So what I mean is like no blackout.
Let's find a record of that, because what I'm seeing reported now is no indication of that. It's saying that the vast majority, in fact, they say 99% have been released. So I'm not going to believe that until I see something that says that. Do I believe that
So
99% of things that were released had nothing redacted? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what you're saying doesn't jive with the reporting I've seen thus far. So I guess we just disagree. And if there is some way you can prove that to me, that's great. But let's move on to something else related to this. But I'll just have to disagree with you with that at this point.
and for I'll post a picture or a link down there in the comments.
But so give me your general hot take on this. So do you think that this is just yet more reason to believe that JFK was not killed with the magic bullet by Lee Harvey Oswald, who was then shot and killed by Jack Ruby? And I think Jack Ruby died of like cancer in jail or something. So it's all very convenient to get rid of one guy, and then the guy who got rid of him, well, a little bit later, he's gone as well. Or do you think that this just shows problem with government in general, even if we are to believe that it was Lee Harvey Oswald who killed him?
My honest opinion is, even with 100% unredacted accessed information, I think the hardest pill for people to swallow is that the government allowed the assassination of a president. That's what I believe fundamentally.
So tell me what that means, because I don't know what that means.
So what JFK wanted to do was abolish the Federal Reserve, and that's why they killed him.
So I still don't know what that means. Who's they, and how does that mean that the government allowed them to do that? Be very specific here.
The CIA. If you really look into the CIA and the FBI, especially the CIA, they have virtually thrown over governments all throughout the whole world. They fund both sides of every war
Okay, so
and profit.
I still don't know what you're saying. So I need you to be very specific here. So are you saying the CIA assassinated JFK? Or are you saying that they allowed it to happen? Give me 3 or 4 sentences at the most and be very specific.
Okay, so they either did it or promoted it, as far as the CIA goes. Everything else is a cover-up. When Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested, he said, "I was a patsy." Quote word for word, "I was a patsy." So,
well, very few people are going to admit their guilt. So I don't know if that has any value. But okay, so even when I ask you to be specific, you can't be. So you either think the CIA did it, or they knew that it was going to happen and they didn't stop it or made it even more possible. It's not the strongest statement to hear from someone. I mean, if you think that the president was killed, I feel like you got to have a pretty good grasp of what that means, and I'm not hearing that from you.
That's okay, man. We still don't know the truth. And even that 1%, even if there's just 1% of all the documents that they haven't released, why are they still hiding it? You know, if they're going to be transparent with us and say that, you know, there was just a lone shooter,
Well,
they wouldn't have to hide anything.
No, that's not necessarily true. I don't think you've paid attention to what I said earlier. They said that up until this point, you don't have to believe them, but they have explained that there are national security and other concerns for 1% of documents. And I don't think it's crazy to think that when you have a lot of documents about a president who was assassinated, that even to this day, there might be some things that they think they can legally withhold to prevent worse consequences, right? So that's what they say. So they have given a reason. So what you just said was just ignoring that. And then above that, you have the 2,400 other records that I guess you could try to say, well, they were hiding it on purpose. But the official story we're getting now is that they kind of lost track of them, and now they found them. So in the short stories that I've looked at, and once again, there were just 2 news stories. The new documents that they found, they have not said what they are, and they've not said that they're going to release them. They've not said that they're not going to release them. That's a different set of documents than the 1% that they said they don't want to release because of national security concerns. So it's entirely possible that in the next several weeks or a couple of months, those 2,400 documents could be released. Or if you think just percentage wise, maybe 99% of them get released. But to see a conspiracy here on just these 2 sets of documents that have been withheld, one on purpose, you know, purportedly because of national security concerns, and the other purportedly because, well, they just kind of lost track of them. It's hard for me to imagine that, you know, just logically, that if you have 99% of other documents that do not say the CIA knew about this and let it happen, or the CIA actually killed him, you left room for either possibility. It's hard to imagine that would be contained in only 1% of documents. It doesn't make sense to me that it would be. I feel like you'd have to do a little bit more of a withholding than 1%. I guess it's technically possible, but it just doesn't seem likely to me.
3% have been redacted of all current documents exposed. 3% of it is redacted.
Okay, yeah, tweet me the link and I'll read it. It's just what you said earlier was a lot more than 3% based on your verbiage, and now it's down to 3%, which is not that much bigger than 1%, which is the stuff that they have not given out at all. So it just seems like the more we look into the facts, the less it sounds like your original presentation of those facts. But I am really glad you brought this story up. I have not been paying attention to this too much. I personally do not believe in the lone gunman theory, but I don't think for a second that anything that's going to be released or found just randomly, as they've just apparently found these 2,400 records, I don't think it's going to shed really any new insights into shine light on any new insights that we didn't already know. I mean, I think there's enough. If you look at the film and the guy with the umbrella and the fact that Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald as they were bringing him out, I think it's very clear that it was not the lone gunman. I don't know that we're going to get any more new information from these documents, but I will say these are some of the rather large, I'm surprised with myself, amount of decisions that are coming out of the Trump White House that I am absolutely for and I think make perfect sense. So why don't we leave it at this, Nick? Why don't you tell me, give me a prediction. If 2 months from now, all 2,400 of these records have been released, and maybe we get some more clarity. I don't think we're going to really learn anything new. That's my prediction. What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of months on this?
So, so what I think is going to happen is no matter what, information is still going to be redacted. And the only thing that I'm okay as far as redactions go is leaving out people's private names. If the only thing that is left out is names, I would call it actually being released. If they blank out paragraphs, if they blank out statements, anything but names, I say it still hasn't been released.
Okay, so then 2 months from now, what do you think is going to happen?
Only time will tell, man. I need to read them, you know.
But I mean, so
If it
my
is
prediction, as I just mentioned, was that I don't think we're going to learn anything new. We might learn some new interesting details. We might have confirmation of things that we generally already know, but we don't have official confirmation from the governments. But I don't think we're going to learn a bunch of new stuff.
I don't either. I think it's going to be a few very specific things, but either way, at that same point, why hide it?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think it doesn't take someone a very long time to come up with reasons why even a document trail that goes back to the 60s could contain information that we don't want released due to national security. It doesn't mean that you agree with that. You might think, well, national security be damned. It's sort of like an Edward Snowden sort of discussion. Well, is he a hero or is he a villain? It kind of really matters what you think about, should we just know what the government's doing because we're the people, or are there things the government can be doing even if they're really what we don't expect, and they have the right to, for national security and other reasons, to not let that out? I think this is somewhat of a similar discussion, but I would say, at least with Edward Snowden, when he did release documents and tell us about the spying on America's own citizens and our allies, that was a bit of a revelation. Maybe some people thought that was the case, but it was like, oh no, this is really happening. I think we're not going to get as much of a revelation, unfortunately, from JFK. So, like you said, Nick, only time will tell. But that's my prediction. Stay with me, Nick, over on Twitter Spaces. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. We're going to get to some more messages over on stereo. Stay in line over on Twitter Spaces as well. But Ron has joined us, patreon.com/NEWZ Debate supporter Ron. You can jump in front of the line and be an instant co-host for this and every other show by supporting the program on patreon.com/NEWZ Debate, like Ron and Glenn and Patrice and a bunch of other cool people. Ron, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Lee, how are you?
I'm good. We had it at the top of the show. We heard from Better Call Sal telling us about she had a stroke in about the last week, and the stuff is clearly, needing to be taken care of, but she's in really good spirits, and she seems to be doing well health-wise, as much as you can be following a stroke. And so we had that sort of shocking but also inspiring story, and it made me think of Ron, because Ron is someone who handles those sort of stories really well. Ron has told us about things from his own life, but also what I really remember from you being on the show is that when other people tell those stories, Ron is so good at talking to them and giving them positive, you don't say reinforcement, but giving them like positive, affirmative comments, that I often just say, Ron, why don't you say something nice right now, because he's so good at it. So it's great to have you on the show.
Yes, I represent the empathetic part of the show.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I know what you mean. But Sal, I hope you get better. I'm glad to hear this. Glad to see you here, or hear you here. Get it? But I just want to say I'm glad you're doing better, and I know it's not easy. I'm sure. Probably a lot. Actually, really scary. Actually, I haven't had a stroke. Can't say what it's like, but I know that it must not be pleasant at all. But I'm glad that you're doing better. I think I said that 3 or 4 times, so I hope you understand that. I hope you're doing better. I'm glad you're doing better.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ron. And
That's why
yeah,
it's great to
I
have
am
Ron on the
feeling
show.
a lot better. Yeah, I am feeling a lot better. And it was the single most terrifying thing I've ever gone through. Um, so yeah, thank you for your words of encouragement.
Welcome.
It's been a roller coaster.
That it has. My goodness.
Mm.
But back to the really important topics, Ron. How many Coca-Colas have you had today in the great state of Georgia?
3, I think. 3.
Three.
Tres.
Yeah,
En español.
really good.
En español, Ramon would say, en español, tres. Tres refrescos.
And was
Refrescos.
that cans? Was that the glass bottle?
Cans, but I do better if I put it in, I actually get styrofoam cups and I buy those. And so put ice in those and then to
Do
put
they
the
do
Coke
they
into the
still sell styrofoam cups? Aren't those like horrible for
down
the
here in the
environment?
South, they do like crazy. We're kind of slow to, the what we should do. For some reason, we are the last ones to finally give out, or to give into environmental concerns. I didn't realize that until my friend Cece, who's a northerner. I was born in the north, by the way, but I moved down here when I was 2. She opened my eyes to how we still use plastic at Walmart, plastic bags at our grocery stores. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, I think some places ban those, and then
There
they
you
make
go.
you buy bags if you don't have your own bags. And some stores, I think, give you a slight, like 2-cent discount if you bring your own bags or something. But I guess not in Georgia.
That's right. I don't think so. But yes. So I wanted to comment on this topic about the JFK records. Uh, I was a lone gun theory guy forever, and I would not change it until I saw this one gentleman gave a lecture at college, and it was legit. It wasn't like a conspiracy nut or anything. The only thing that I'm able to entertain completely, and it's probably true, was that it was a rogue element of the CIA. Maybe not even rogue, just the CIA in and of itself is kind of rogue, or has to be a spy agency, an information agency. But yeah, that's the only thing I'll entertain. Uh, I
I
it's
forget the
crazy that
exact reason Nick gave. I think did he say JFK was going to get rid of the treasury or something like that? So
no,
if you're
he said Federal Reserve,
Federal Reserve, okay, thank you. You're once again
but it
better listener, better
right,
person than me, and I own that. That's why it's great to have her on the show. So if it was a rogue um, component of the CIA, whatever that is, do you think that same reason makes sense?
well, this is the thing. That could be one of the reasons, but the main reason, when Eisenhower left the his last speech was he talked about the dangers of the military industrial complex and how easily a nation can be swept away by the urgency for war, and it's getting more and more difficult for a president to not be controlled by that military industrial pro, um, complex because of the money that's made from it by going to war. Now, we were at the end of 63. Kennedy already planned, he said, we took out 1,000 of our people in Vietnam, and we didn't have a huge presence. And even after it was after he died or was assassinated, they still brought those guys back, 1,000 of them, and it was going to continue. We were not going. I guarantee you, we were not going to go to war with Vietnam because JFK had gone on a trip in the 50s with his brother Robert, and they went and they actually were there when the French still had it. And he knew then, like knew then, he knew then, like he knew later when he was president, that um, that that it was the unwinnable war. And so um, it would have been the lack of going. It would have been a complete turnaround of Vietnam policy, and or not turnaround, but we wouldn't have deepened our presence there or strengthened our presence there and gone to war. Also, with the the speech at the American University in wherever that is. I forgot. Is it Washington D.C.? Do you know?
You said American University?
Right.
I think that's in
Or
the
is it
DC
Rice?
area.
Yeah. Okay. So he gave
There's
us,
several ones, but I think American is there, Georgetown is there.
yes, Georgetown. Okay. So he gave a speech in which, famously he said, with the Russians, he said, we all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we all are mortal. What he was doing was he was going to lessen his antagonism, or not antagonism, but he wasn't going to be Russia was going to be seen more as a friend instead of a foe. But you do that, that means that it lessens the chance of war. So these powers that make the money won't be able to make their money. Not going to war, they won't make money. So that's what I believe. I believe it was that, and maybe probably Federal Reserve. It all comes down to money. People, you wouldn't believe what people are willing to do if you promise them $6 million or something. You wouldn't believe
I
it.
do agree that if JFK was killed by some wing of the U.S. government, it always goes with money. You're absolutely right. Whatever the situation is, it always goes down to money. I just asked really quickly ChatGPT because I was not remembering myself. I thought what you were saying was generally the case, and so it looks like that. By the time of his assassination in 1963, um, JFK had increased the amount of troops in Vietnam to 16,000. They were officially non-combat advisors, but they were doing more than just advising. But it was Lyndon Johnson who made the full-scale commitment by sending ground troops in
That's it.
1964. So yes, there was a huge increase. I guess the interesting thing about, okay, well, if there was something with Vietnam and it wouldn't have escalated if JFK hadn't been assassinated, then you got to start thinking, well, the guy he chose to be his vice president was like working against him. So like, did he know he was going to be assassinated, or did whoever killed JFK just roll the dice thinking that, well, Johnson's definitely going to increase Vietnam and JFK is not, so we'd rather have Johnson in there. So anytime you go with one theory, it's not just, it just fits in like a glove, like a O.J.
Right.
Simpson reference. If the glove does not fit, you cannot equate it. So it doesn't fit exactly, but you're right. That's how history worked. I guess my other question for you then is talking about Russia and being an enemy versus trying to be more of a friend. We certainly had both of those sort of angel versus devil on your shoulder approach. But do you disagree that the Cold War was won, culminating with what's his name, who had dementia towards the end of his second term?
Oh, Reagan.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of dementia, I have a little bit of that myself, apparently. Do you not think that the Cold War was won, culminating with Reagan at the very end, by us letting them know that if they attacked us, we would destroy the world? So mutually assured destruction. And then the Soviets were unable to pay for the weapons that we could pay for. And then they just generally bankrupted themselves and fell apart. Do you disagree with that sort of resolution to the Cold War?
I do agree with it, pretty much. Except the fact that we had a advantage always. There was, we had the advantage always in terms of how many missiles we had, and yeah, absolutely. And we had more satellite. We had more missiles in range of their, like, we had, like, for instance, when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, we had some missiles in Turkey that were pointed at them, and it was a deal. It was it ended because we said that we would pull those out, but without any press being involved. So we would, keep it a secret, and that's what we did. But still, it's like we're getting mad at them for installing things in Cuba, but then we're putting things in Turkey and pointing at, it's like, it's just hypocritical.
Do as I
That's all.
say, not as I do.
Absolutely.
But if that's the case, and I agree with you, I think generally that's how the Cold War was won. And I think you needed a strong guy like Reagan, just like now. I think Trump's going to have a lot of success, and I think he's already shown the success he can have by
Right.
just being that guy that's not going to take shit from anybody. I mean, certainly there's going to be some casualties because of that, but just generally, he's going to get stuff done that no one else could get done. And I think Reagan had a little bit of that in him. Then isn't that kind of contrary to what you were saying earlier about not wanting troops places and trying to be more friendly with our enemies? I mean, it seems like the way that you beat the USSR was being very antagonistic and bankrupting them.
Oh, I'm not saying, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, he wanted to go a peaceful route, and the military industrial complex said, no, thank you. And we're going to get rid of this threat to our making money, and by we're going to, it's threatening our ability to be masters of war.
So what do you think about that? Do you think they had a point, hypothetically, if that's why they took JFK out? Like, do you think maybe they had a point?
No, of course not. It's just greed, if that's true.
So if JFK had served, was that his first term? Was he a first term president?
That was his first term.
Yeah.
Right.
So if he had served his complete first term and then in theory won a second term, do you think we would be in a better world now? Or did we maybe need not trying to condone a hypothetical military industrial complex kills JFK, but if that's what happened and we ended the Cold War the way that we did, would a world where JFK served 2 terms have been better off, or maybe would have that soft touch been less successful?
Well, it's funny because it's funny you asked that. There's a book, 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which is one of my favorites of his, and the guy goes back in time it's a portal that always goes back to like 1958 or 59, or 57 maybe. Anyway, one of those years, but he stays to save JFK from assassination. When he goes back into the portal to our current time, which would have been 2000 something, he finds everything is complete disarray, mostly because he has personally altered time, which you shouldn't do, or altered events so much. It's caused like earthquakes in Maine, but they talk about how it would have been, and it just basically would have. But okay, so let's just say it's not about going back and changing something in the past. Let's say that's true, that he had another term. Now, first of all, the myth of him would vanish, because he's only mythologized.
Absolutely. If JFK
he's
had served
mythologized
out 1 term, or if he had gotten 2 terms, we would not look at him in the godlike way we do now. Absolutely not.
Oh no, I believe even if he would have finished his first term. You think something else?
No. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, just imagine if Barack Obama had been assassinated in his first term, like, he would be God.
Oh, of course.
So I think that the mythos of JFK would have changed, no matter what he accomplished. It's sort of like Kurt Cobain or any member of the 27 Club, Janis Joplin.
Jim
Morrison.
If
if they had lived into their 50s and become fat Jim Morrison, like fat Elvis, like, maybe we would look at them a little bit differently. Sorry, I thought that's what you were talking about, but go back to what you were saying.
No, I was just saying, like, even if he would have started his second term, you mean like if he would have lost that after the first term, you mean?
Just anything.
It's not important.
Some people can maintain it. Like, for instance, Elvis, he certainly turned into fat Elvis, and apparently he died on the toilet. But it's not like Graceland didn't become a thing. But just imagine if Elvis had died in his 30s. I think that we would look at him in a more revered way. Just sort of like if Michael Jackson had died before he turned into weird, probably pedophile Michael Jackson, like, we would look at him differently, even though we still do adore him because he was so talented. So I guess the only point I was trying to make is that we would consider JFK differently today. At the very least, he would not be the way we think of him now. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Sure. I would have had I've had imagine like him like on kind of like a Charlie Rose type interview in the 70s. And with he's got salt and pepper hair, and it's so strange how I'd have that. It's a very potent image, but anyway, you're talking about his administration. But had he lived, we would have seen. Um, I think we could have seen a more peaceful world. I think Vietnam wouldn't have happened. I don't think, but he might have been carried away by the stronger voices in his administration, um, calling to protect Vietnam because of the whole domino theory. That was the reason why we went there in the first place. The domino theory is that if this little nation loses her
Yeah,
freedom,
it was Korea, then it was Vietnam, and we did a bunch of meddling in Central and South America and other parts of the world. But yeah,
absolutely.
those were the two big ones, right? It was Korea right after World War II. In fact, a
Mhm.
lot of the same technology and a lot of the same troops just pushed them over to Korea. That one ended in a stalemate, but at least it ended with sort of their side and our side. Vietnam, eventually we just pulled out. So Vietnam was the loss, and I guess you would say Korea was the win.
Yeah, I mean, Korea was a win.
Well, because you still have North and South Korea. There's only one Vietnam
Exactly.
now.
Exactly. And the thing is that though with Vietnam, we didn't realize that they were having a civil war. We thought they were going to be controlled by China, but they're not. They're not a satellite of China. They're
Yeah,
their own nation.
that's the really interesting thing is that I'm not saying it would happen this way. I don't know enough about the Korean War to even be able to predict how it would have turned out differently. But the way Vietnam has turned out now, certainly South Korea is more of a developed nation. It has more soft power with K-pop and everything, and it has more like hard power with its military and all of its Samsung this and everything. But North Korea is nuts, right? So there were a lot of problems with the way the Korean War ended. But with Vietnam, while it's certainly more of a developing nation, would we rather take a Korea that was both Koreas and it resembled Vietnam rather than the one we have now where South Korea is really important, but North Korea is crazy? That might have been a better if you could trade them. Because it's Vietnam seems okay, right? Like it's not maybe the most democratic
Sure.
place, but like
Right.
it's certainly not North Korea. So maybe I don't know, maybe Korea would have been better off if we had lost that one too.
Absolutely. I think though that overall, I'll land my plane here. JFK would have definitely. It was the end of our. Well, see, I think about that. I think about they say it was the end of our innocence as a nation. But what about when Lincoln was assassinated? Didn't we lose our innocence then, or didn't we lose our innocence anytime a leader's gunned down? I think
You know
so.
what this means is that we're not innocent anymore because Donald Trump's here. May it rest in peace.
There you go.
I mean, we're no longer an innocent nation.
That's it. But thank you so much for letting me speak. I'll stick around and listen to everyone. Hello, Patrice and Sal. And glad you're feeling better, Sal. I'm sorry you had a horrible experience. Hello, Glenn, Nicole, and Dee.
Yeah, Ron, like I said, he does a better job than I do. Didn't they make a TV show about that book?
Yes, they did. James Franco is Hulu
Ooh,
series. It's not bad.
it must have been before he got canceled.
One point I want to make about that. When I read the book, you know how when you read a book, they describe a character that's introduced, and you're supposed to, you're using your imagination, right? And I pictured her a certain way when they made that miniseries or whatever it is, the series. It looked exactly like in my mind. The only time that's ever happened.
Oh, okay. So it was good casting, at least physically.
Yes, it was his love interest in that. I pictured in my mind before I saw the series. When I read the book. It's the
Oh,
only time
okay.
that it's
So
ever
not James
matched.
Franco,
It's the
but the
only time.
woman
Not
he
James
was
Franco, no.
banging. What about
Exactly. And
James
I don't know
Franco?
why.
Did he resemble the character?
Oh, I didn't even. No, he did not. Not at all. He was
Okay.
definitely way out there.
I love that you mentioned earthquakes in Maine because if it's a Stephen King book, of course, everything takes place in Maine.
Right.
That's how you know it's a
Mhm.
Stephen King book. Yeah, I might have to check that
Yeah.
out. I really like the idea of that sort of thing. There's a Star Trek, the original series episode. I
Mhm.
forget what it's called, but it's one of the most highly thought of episodes, and it might be, um, is it Liza Minnelli? Like this, some high profile actress from back in the day. She plays a woman who runs like a shelter for like
Oh,
homeless poor people, and Kirk and Spock go back in time, and Kirk falls in love with her, and she's crossing the street, and she's going to get hit by a car, and she was meant to get hit
mhm.
by a car. That's how it always happened. But since Kirk and
Right.
Spock were in the past, he saved her life. And then it turns out America becomes a better place because she becomes like a leader of a movement of helping, homeless people and having compassion for
Right.
your fellow human being. And because of that, the Nazis win World War II. And
Whoa.
basically, the rest of the episode is Kirk really upset that he has to kill this woman because she has to die because she did die
Right.
before they went back in time
Because
and changed it.
so even though the Nazis won the war, they weren't like they didn't own the whole world.
Well, no, so sorry. I should have said they went back in time to like the 30s,
Mhm.
and they saved her life, but then they were able to tell that in the future where they are. So Star Trek would be like, I don't know, the year
Oh.
2300 or something. The
Uh-huh.
future is really horrible because the Nazis won World War II. And so the future
Uh-huh.
that they came from no longer exists. It's like Back to the Future. If they go back to
Right.
the future, it'll be a new future where the Nazis won World War II and how that changed Earth, for
I
the
see.
foreseeable future. So they basically have to kill her. They don't kill her, they let her die, but they basically have to let her die because she was supposed to die, but they interfered and Kirk fell in love with her. And you feel it, he loves this woman, and she has to die for
Sure.
the good of humankind. So it's like, okay, whoever
Butterfly
killed
effect.
JFK, if he was president, you can imagine that it could be better, it could be worse. We don't know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's automatically better.
Sure. And there's no telling. We can't people love to debate this about what would happen if he lived. We can't say for sure anything. We really can't. I don't think so. Um,
In that
it's
Stephen
amazing to.
King book, Ron, when
Mhm.
JFK survives and he goes on Charlie Rose or whatever, is he sitting next to a blonde Marilyn Monroe that he's still banging, a couple decades later?
No, no. The imagining the interview that was just on my own. That's not in the book.
Oh,
You
would you
understand?
imagine that JFK had left his wife, Jackie, and he would
No.
be with Marilyn Monroe in the 80s or whatever?
Oh no. He just had like 1,000 mistresses, like always.
Well, maybe it would
Kind
be
of a
some blonde. It wouldn't be Marilyn Monroe, but he'd be sitting next to some blonde on Charlie Rose who was not
No,
Jackie.
I think no, even post presidents don't divorce, so there would have been he would have gone on being a philanderer. That's all.
Okay. He just would have been. Can you
Just
imagine if
yeah.
JF,
I mean,
rather than
he
Trump having to pay off a blonde porn star for sleeping with her and then trying to keep her mouth shut? Could you imagine if instead that had been JFK in the 90s or the 80s?
well, right. Well, the thing is that that would have been post presidency, but the thing is, he didn't even want to get married. He was a bachelor. He liked being a bachelor, but it was necessary for him to do that so he could be president material. He couldn't be a single anymore. He could be a couple, and so he chose well, definitely well, and I think by the end, when towards his end of his life, they were at a better place. But she learned how to live with all of that.
Yeah, can you just imagine how different her life would have been if her husband had not been killed and if he had ran a second term? Yeah, you wonder if RFK had not been assassinated, what would RFK Jr. be like?
Well, right. Well, I'm not right now. I'm reading the most intensive books about his life, Robert Kennedy, not the junior, but Robert Kennedy. It was written by Schlesinger, which I think is how you said it. He was in his brother's administration, and it's the most intensive.
Oh, something just changed. Like maybe your earbuds disconnected or something. We can still kind of hear you, but you sounded better like 3 seconds ago than you do now.
Sounds better now?
No, I'm not
Hello?
sure what happened, but it's kind of fuzzy. Before it was a little bit more clear. It's okay. We'll work through it.
Okay, how about now? Better?
Oh, that sounds better. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, I'm reading a book about Robert Kennedy. I've read many books about him, but this one is the most extensive or intensive of his study of his life, and it's pretty interesting. Did you know that Caroline Kennedy read when he was being confirmed? She went on. She told her side, like he tried to people not to affirm him.
You mean when he was being confirmed as Attorney General, she tried to get him to not be confirmed?
No. Junior, RP Junior.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she said he was. Did she call him a
Predator? Yeah.
Yeah, predator. Yeah, I was trying to think. Why did she call him a? Yeah, no, she called him a predator, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it was just pretty dramatic because they don't usually ever talk out against, go against the family, speak against the family ever. So it was pretty dramatic, but oh well, it is what it is.
Well, the ironic thing is that the one time that someone speaks against another Kennedy, it won't matter. I mean, I assume he's going to be confirmed, right? Do you think he'll be confirmed?
Sure. Absolutely.
And then we can all enjoy all the raw milk, more raw milk.
That's right. It's gonna be good stuff.
Make cereal great again. Let's reset. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. It's always a pleasure to have Ron with us. Stay with us, Ron. Please jump in at any time. Okay, so let's do this. I have some messages over on stereo that have piled up, but I think the people who left them are no longer over on stereo, so we can play them at any time. But Nicole has tweeted out a story about. Let me pull this up. Trying to bring up like a local TV station or something. The murder trial of Megan Boswell. I have no idea what this is about, but there are some details here we could go through. So, Nicole, you were requesting to be a speaker before, and you're not now. But if you wanted to, would you like to discuss this? You can request to be a speaker, and I'll throw you up. Okay. Yep. Let's make you a speaker, and we'll discuss. Okay, so Nicole, while you're switching over to the speaker role, I'm just going to read a little bit from WCYB.com, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. Day
Can you hear
6. Oh, yes. Yep. You sound great, actually. Yeah. Day 6 of the murder trial of Megan Boswell began on Tuesday. Okay, yeah, so today. And
no, it's day 6. So it started last Wednesday. They actually have the jury sequestered. So they had court Saturday. They don't normally do that. It's in Tennessee. They don't normally sequester they don't normally have trials during the weekend, but they did because the jury is sequestered. It's supposed to be at least a 3-week trial. So they kind of wanted to move through things.
Okay.
So it started Wednesday.
Yeah, so the 6th day was today, and
correct.
The prosecution called Paul Durant, a special agent with the FBI, working cases of crimes against children. Oh, this is not a fun case.
Oh, it's
Um,
horrible. The details are awful. So basically, yes. So basically, sorry, my son. This is basically a Casey Anthony 2.0. A mother, her child goes missing. She lies for months to everybody. She has a story that she tells different people. People get tired of the tales that she's telling them. They start asking, "Where's Evelyn?" She turned 1 at the end of November. And by February, her dad had had enough of the lies. He's like, "Megan, where's Evelyn?" And she wouldn't crack. Finally, she did. Well, actually, she only cracked after they had arrested her and found her daughter's remains. She was actually, it's traumatizing. She was, foil was wrapped completely around her head. She was then wrapped in her blanket, shoved into a garbage bag, shoved into the garbage can, and was in a playhouse that Megan's father built for her when she was a little girl. Among, like, she had in the trash can with her was like broken eggshells, garbage debris. Um, there was some decomp, but because it was winter, there wasn't a ton. There was very little bug activity because bugs couldn't get inside where she was, and they think that she was alive when she was shoved in the trash can. It's horrible.
So that sucks. All right.
Mhm.
So what do you think about this trial? Do you think that the mom is gonna be found guilty, be found not guilty? Do you have
I'm really
a hot
hoping
take
they.
on the
I
trial
really hoping.
itself?
I'm really hoping that they don't have. I'm hoping it's more of a Susan Smith ending than a Casey Anthony ending, and here's why. So her biggest thing was that Evelyn was with her dad, Ethan. Ethan ended up not even being the father of her child. He was on a military base in another state. They sent they sent detectives on a wild goose chase through several states. They pulled this guy off the army base to grill him on a daughter that wasn't even his. Um, then when they cleared him, she started blaming her mother, who has a drug problem,
Wait,
and her mom's boyfriend.
when you say she accused him, did he think that the girl was his, or did he know at that
He,
point that he was not the father?
I don't know if he knew or not. I don't think a DNA test was ever done until after Evelyn was recovered.
Wow, that's rough. Can you imagine,
Yes.
sir? Your daughter is dead. That's the bad news. The good news,
Yes,
not your daughter.
correct. And I don't know if they haven't released to the public who her father is. There's speculation. But then once they found the mom and her boyfriend, and they were cleared of not having Evelyn, suddenly Hunter, the new boyfriend, became the topic of their conversation. So today we have the defense attorney trying to railroad the medical examiner into saying that SIDS was a possibility, or someone rolled over and killed her, which she had foil in her throat. So I don't know how SIDS would cause
Yeah,
foil to go into her throat,
I
but
might have lost a step in this. Is she saying that she did not dispose of the body? Because
correct.
if she's
She's
saying
admitting
she
to
didn't do it,
nothing.
then it would make no sense to be like, well, maybe her daughter died of SIDS, because then you'd have to say how it went from SIDS to dumped body. So I guess
Right.
the defense is just trying to cover like every basis. So they're trying to say
Correct.
she didn't do anything, but if she did, maybe it was accidental.
Correct. Or she had a slight heart defect, which isn't a defect. In children under 2, it's a very common thing. The heart valve isn't connected completely. The medical examiner's like, that had nothing to do with her death. Her death was violently graphic. I won't get into the graphic details. You can look it up because it's a lot. But she was very much alive when she was put in that garbage can, or at least when the foil was wrapped around her. Like, but the way she was put in the can, she was contorted. And that's the best way I can put it. And when they first found her in that trash, they thought she was a baby doll because she was wearing a sleeper. And they weren't even expecting to find her in the sleeper. The Amber Alert went out that she was wearing a pink jumpsuit. because the lie that she spun when they realized, they're like, okay, Ethan does not have her. Where's Evelyn? And that's when she said, oh, well, my mom was watching her, and I think my mom gave her to someone else to watch. And none of
I
that
guess
ended up being true.
I guess my question is, and actually I asked ChatGPT about this, and this is how advanced ChatGPT is. It now has up to the date results. When I first started using it, it was delayed by 2 or 3 years. So I'll get to some of these details here, but it sounds to me like this should be like a slam dunk. Like it just sounds like this is the worst case to have as a defense attorney. So
Oh,
like,
God.
do you anticipate at all that she could be found innocent? Like this seems like a pretty cut and
Our
dry.
biggest fear, those of us who are wanting justice for Evelyn, is our biggest fear is the two things that she's going to be mainly held culpable for is abuse of a corpse and lying to the police. Because they have a
Because they
really
could
tough
say
time
that
proving
somehow she
that it was
died and then she
malicious.
just dropped the
Correct.
body somewhere, which is a
Correct.
crime, but is not the same thing as killing your child.
Yes, because they're having a hard time proving that she was maliciously killed. And that's what they're kind of struggling with. Now, there was a piece of gum that was stuck to the inside of the trash can that was above Evelyn. The DNA came back as Megan's. There was a hand or a prints that were pulled off the trash can. Those were Megan's.
Word to the wise: if you're disposing of the body of your daughter, swallow your gum. Jesus,
No
really?
kidding.
She like a school desk. She stuck her gum on like the dumpster.
It was a kitchen garbage can. Like
Oh, I'm
a
sorry.
kitchen
So
garbage can.
this is really dark, but so she put her child in a garbage can and then dropped it somewhere. Like, is that what you're trying to say? Like they
Yes. She put it in a playhouse that belonged to her when she was a
Yes.
child.
Okay. But in the garbage can, she
Correct.
had gum in there.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So this is
Yeah.
not the CIA. We talked earlier about maybe the CIA killed JFK. Well, Megan Boswell certainly not trained by the CIA. Let me read a little
Correct.
bit from ChatGPT and see if it jogs anything in your mind. Megan Boswell of Tennessee is accused of murdering her 15-year-old daughter, Evelyn. 15-month-old, yeah. She was last seen in December 2019, but reported missing in February of 2020. As you discussed, like, where is she? So there was discrepancy there. After an extensive search, authorities discovered her remains on family property in March of 2020. So this was happening right before COVID. In August, a grand jury indicted Boswell on 19 charges, including 2 counts of felony murder. Initially, her trial was set for February of 2023, but was pushed back 2 years to allow her new legal counsel adequate preparation time. Like I said, this is not a good case to take on as a defense attorney.
The attorney wanted her to take a deal and she refused.
Oh, so she had to get a new defense attorney. Oh, okay. Yep. I can imagine being the defense attorney and be like, please take a deal. Please take a deal.
I know. And see, and I know this is really speculatory, but people don't think that she acted alone. I think she did. So her boyfriend, because, they always eliminate the boyfriend as a suspect first, because why wouldn't you? So the new boyfriend, the last time family really saw her was Thanksgiving, which that year, it was the 28th of November. Okay. On December 2nd, she started her job at the Chicken Shack. It was a brand new restaurant opening up, and she told the owner that she didn't have any stipulations to her work schedule because the daughter's father, Ethan, who wasn't her dad, had custody of her. So she made it sound like she had a pretty open, like, hire me. I don't have any, limitations. So she gets hired on December 2nd. She decides she needs a babysitter. She contacts her foster mother because she actually was in foster care when she had Evelyn because she was truant. And because of her truancy, she was put in foster care. She has a messy life. Megan's life was sad. Evelyn's life was sadder. So on the second she gets her job, she contacts Sue, who is her stepmother's sister, and she says that she'll watch Evelyn, but she wants paid. Megan didn't like that. She didn't want to pay for, a babysitter. We suspect that Evelyn was being left alone for long periods of time, because when the sitter got her, she's like, this child has the worst diaper rash I've ever seen in my entire life, and I'm a foster mother. It was so bad that she took pictures, and one of Megan's excuses to why she didn't have Evelyn was because Ethan supposedly got emergency custody because of that diaper rash. So the second she starts her job, Sue has her the morning of the 6th. Megan goes and picks her up from Sue's. She goes to visit this new guy that she's talking to at work. She meets him at the chicken shack. So this is the 6th. She picks her up. She goes to Ethan's. She hangs out, Hunter's. She hangs out with this guy. Supposedly they talk. She texts her friend that she's going back home, that they just talked. Nowhere does she mention having Evelyn. It's strange. And then she texts her at almost 11 saying that it went good. They just talked, blah, blah, blah. Her friend texted her back at shortly after midnight. Just before 4 a.m., Megan texts her back, and it's weird. I just want to know that I love you. Like, it was a weird, message that she sent. And then on the 9th, so 2 days after that, her friend had a baby. So she went to see her friend that just had the baby in the hospital. She didn't have Evelyn with her. She always had Evelyn with her. So Bailey says, "Where's Evelyn?" And she said, "She's with Ethan." So nobody has seen Evelyn alive after December 6th. So at some point, something happened between December 6th and December 9th when she was with her friend.
I'm really starting to feel bad for the owners of that chicken shack. I think at that point
gosh,
probably
the
just
kid
need
had
to
a mental
change
health
the name
crisis.
to the Chicken Saloon, just kind of do some
Well,
redecorating and get a new
that's the
location.
thing. People were sending Hunter death threats. He ended up having multiple psychotic breakdowns. He's now in a mental health institution. He's a mess. You think about it. They started talking, and 4 days later, her daughter dies. And people are saying he's responsible, that he helped kill this child. You just meet someone, you're going to kill their kid for them and hide the body. So the defense attorney was trying to say...
Yeah, that's the worst dating app I've ever heard of. Thanks, Bumble.
I know. So the defense was trying to say yesterday, he kept bringing up tinfoil hat theories, the defense attorney was, because they're saying that Hunter may be schizophrenic. So he starts saying, is that why the foil was on the baby's head?
Tearing him apart, yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said,
But
this
today,
sounds like the worst situation ever for a defense attorney, and I feel really bad for anyone connected to this who did not have anything to do with it. So probably
it's crazy.
Sounds like maybe that new boyfriend, certainly the owners of the chicken shack. Oh man, it sucks for them. But to go back to all of this, this sounds like a slam dunk. But do you realistically think that she would either walk free or just get convicted of improperly disposing of a body, that sort of a thing, rather than murder?
Yeah, and that's what I'm afraid of, because she's already served 5 years. So if they get her of abuse of a corpse and lying to the police, that could maybe get her another 5 years or time
you mean
served.
that she's been in jail this whole time? So yeah, if she got convicted of something, it would be time served, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're afraid of. And then look at Casey Anthony. She waited until she got the highest bidder, made a couple millions off of her story, and she's now dating some guy who has a granddaughter her daughter's age. So that's my biggest fear, is that she's going to walk free, and she's young. She's only 24 or almost 24, so she could have more children. She could be another Gypsy Rose and be out there not getting any psychological help, having more babies.
Yeah, we talked about Gypsy Rose on this show. She got married to a guy and then defended him, and then they announced they were separating. I'm not sure what happened with that. But oh yeah, she on The View, like she I think her star has faded since then, but she became a celebrity for a while.
Still kind of is. When she announced her pregnancy, she put out a baby list, and everything on that list was purchased within 2 days. People love Gypsy Rose. It's so weird. Like, you're idolizing someone who helped murder her mom.
But I would
Regardless of how you
say,
feel
at least
about
with
her
her,
mother,
yeah, at
like,
least with her, she was abused by her mom, and
right.
technically she didn't kill her. She got some poor guy to do it, and he'll
Well,
never
she
get out of
says
prison.
she only
Um,
admitted what she did once she struck a deal.
yeah,
So,
well,
you
whatever the
know,
case, someone else
right.
was involved and it was abusive mom. Like, this is not that. I don't know if America could go crazy for someone who probably killed her daughter. I think that's a little bit different than killing your crazy mom. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying she couldn't go scot free or
Well,
get time served, but wouldn't the reaction be a little bit different? Like for instance, O.J. Simpson now, if that happened today and he was found innocent, people would still be like, we don't want to be near this guy. It wouldn't be a Gypsy Rose situation.
right. I mean, I would hope so. I would really hope so. I don't know how many people even really know about this case. You didn't. You know what I mean? So it's like she could go relocate to somewhere else and let people know who she was. Maybe, maybe not. So it's one of those things people are saying, oh, if she goes to prison and she's in general pop, someone's gonna murk her. I mean, maybe. It just depends. I know that they have to have her protected for a while because she's a kid killer. It's one of those things that could she be a Susan Smith, which I'm so glad they denied her parole.
Can
Did
you
she kill
remind
her
me who
daughter because of a
Susan
boy?
Smith is? I don't know who that is.
She is the mother who put her 2 baby boys in a lake over a man.
Oh no, I have heard of
And
that.
it was in North Carolina. She almost started a race war with her lies because she said she was carjacked by a black man. They were raiding houses in the middle of the night trying to find her boys. This was in 96, 94. It was okay. So their deaths happened right around the time of the O.J. Simpson trial. And people were afraid that because of the O.J. Simpson trial that she was going to get off, and they didn't. They put her in jail for life, and she was eligible for parole this past November. And they're like, no, you can stay there because she's not sorry at all for what she did. She's
Yeah,
shown no remorse
I-
since going to prison.
it's sort of a thing like you mentioned. I didn't know about the woman we're talking about now, Megan Boswell. I didn't remember the name of the woman you're talking about, but of course I did remember the 2 kids in the lake.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, that once again, it's sort of like Michael Jackson today, even though, as we just mentioned a moment ago when I was speaking with Ron, how he still has been able to survive, except for his life. Of course, he's dead. He's still been able
Right.
to survive. Very clearly, probably was molesting kids. But if
Right.
that happened today, like if those sorts of allegations got out today, he would be shut down. It's like R. Kelly. Like no one tries to defend R. Kelly now. Now he was convicted.
Right.
So I think things turn when it specifically when it deals with kids. So Reggie
Yes.
over on Twitter, he says death penalty, pure and simple, whether it's neglect or outright planned, death penalty, zero sympathy for people that hurt kids. Yeah, I think even if we don't know her name and it doesn't ring a bell, I think she's done. So at the very least, it won't be like Gypsy Rose, but then again, maybe there's only one Gypsy Rose. If someone, kills her mom tomorrow and then goes to jail for however many years and comes out, maybe we've kind of already satisfied our interest in that sort
Well,
of a story.
I'm also concerned because we have this, and it's a whole different, side note, but we have a really big problem in the United States, especially with how we justify crime, and specifically, like the term abuse is so loosely used. Someone was abused. That's not necessarily justification to commit a murder, because it's arbitrary. Okay, so I know lots of people who are abused who don't kill their parents or kill their children. And people are already saying, well, Megan had a really bad life. Her dad was abusive and he almost went to jail himself for, attempted murder and blah, blah. Okay, but she alone is responsible for how she decided to make her choices.
I don't
You know,
think that's going to work in this trial. I mean, that could be completely wrong, and it does, but I think that's more of
it
the
helped
Gypsy
Casey
Rose
Anthony.
thing. That's the I'm not an
It helped
expert
Casey
on
Anthony.
I can't tell you about Casey Anthony, but
Yeah.
this one I just don't think it's going to help. Now you are right that you can talk about family history and things that happened to you previously and how that plays
Right.
into your decisions. That happens with battered women all the time. We've talked about it on the show previously. If you murder your husband and or boyfriend as a woman, you're much more likely to get off scot-free than a man who does the exact
Yep.
same thing. And it's
Right.
not because the crime's different, it's because our perception of the crime is different. So it's not always 100% bad to be a woman in society, everybody. Murder your husband, it might
Yeah.
actually work out for you.
You might end up on
Um,
an episode of Snapped, you know, a feature.
exactly. But I think it's important to have that be part of the discussion, whether or not it turns out to be fruitful. Because when someone is abused and then they murder somebody, like I want to know, how are they abused if I'm on the jury, right?
Right.
I think it's much
Right.
more important to have that, even if that means we have to hear about how Megan Boswell had shitty life or whatever, and then it probably is likely she either really, really neglected her daughter, she died, and then she got rid of the body, or somehow actively neglected her. I haven't read anything yet that makes it sound like she just outright killed her. Do you think that it was some sort of either accident that she caused, or just neglect and her daughter
I
died?
was starting to think so until the Emmy took the stand and talked about how purposeful and forceful everything was. And the Emmy is the one who went to the scene and unwrapped her at the scene and then took her back and did the autopsy. After hearing that testimony today, that was pretty damning. The other thing that was pretty damning for the defense was you could tell the defense attorney was like, I don't want these submitted because you can't question Hunter. He's in a mental health institution and not mentally sound for trial. And he does not want to put Megan on the stand because she's a pathological liar and she'll talk herself into a circle. But there was messages that was recovered from Facebook between her and Hunter in February, and he said he was talking to her about where you said that Evelyn was safe, that she was going to come home safe, and she's like, I told you I can't talk about it because the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation told me I can't talk about it. I'm just trying to get my baby back home. Why would she say that to him if he knew she was dead? So that
Nicole,
pretty
do
much
you
exonerates
host a
him.
Megan Boswell crime podcast? You have crazy details on this.
I thought about it. I actually had started a blog, like one of my posts I did on Ellen Greenberg. She's the teacher out in Pennsylvania who supposedly deleted herself, even though she was stabbed 20 times and most of them were in the back of her head and neck. I don't know if you heard about her.
Sorry,
That's
you
insane.
mean suicide? Is that the new term you say? Delete?
Correct. Well, I don't know if you get in trouble for saying suicide, but
No,
yes.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So
Yes.
even though it
Her
clearly looks like she did not, they're saying that it was self-inflicted.
one of the stab wounds severed her spinal cord, but yet she still managed to stab herself in the heart and then zip up her hoodie.
So
It
do you
went from a
listen
homicide.
to like true crime stuff, or is it just
I
that you know
do.
so much about? Okay. I was
I'm
wondering.
kind of a
So
true crime junkie, and I have like I look at things. Some people see things on social media and they're there. I mean, I see lots of different things on social media, but
if
when
I
I
look
see
on
things that
social
don't make
media, I'm like,
sense,
hey, these are people enjoying drinks with their friends and their coworkers and stuff. And you look and you say, look at that. I see that there. There's a fingerprint there. There's a knife there. Like, oh, well, severed the cord.
I wish that I had, photographic memory because I could put it to good use, but my brain obsesses when things don't make sense. I have to make sense of things that don't make sense. And I can't stop thinking about it until I either have my thoughts on paper, which is why I do the blog, or I talk it through with people until it makes sense to me. But
So do you
suicide,
have like other friends that you talk about Megan Boswell with or other cases? Like, or is this just you, like lone gunman, if you will? Like this is your thing and no one else
Kind
around
of.
you is at that level?
Kind of, because like I'm currently, because it's I mean, I have been on the Evelyn Boswell group since the Amber Alert went out, even though I'm technically from Ohio. I'm in Georgia right now. I'm technically from Ohio when it happened in Tennessee, but it happened super close to where my friend lives. So when the Amber Alert went out, she's like, oh my gosh, this little girl is missing in my area, and posted about it. So I was interested in seeing that she was found, and she was just never recovered, never recovered. People were asking questions. They were wanting, to have Ethan's head on a pike because he must have Evelyn. And then it was found that he didn't have Evelyn. So I've actually been following this since the beginning. So this is kind of a closure in a sense to me. So I'm in an actual group chat with people who are also watching the trial live. But I don't know
How
that
did
I'll
you
talk to.
get into is this like friends, or did you find some sort of
No.
group? How did you get
I mean,
connected
we're
to
friends
this?
now. It's a
No, you're
group. It was a
friends now,
Facebook group. Yeah.
okay, so you sought it out, you found it, and you found a
hmm
community of people who are also very interested in this specific case.
Correct. And then once it's done, I might talk to them again. I might never talk to them again. I don't know. I mean,
Have you
sometimes
thought
when I make
about
friends, they're
doing
friends for life.
Facebook doesn't have social audio. They were testing it for a while and they got rid of it. Like
Well,
Reddit and a bunch of other places had it and
I'm
then they
a
got rid of
gamer
it.
nerd. I'm a gamer nerd. So I am on Twitch. I don't have my face out there yet. Like I don't have a camera, but I do have Twitch that
Well,
I
so my
stream
question
on
was is
gaming.
if you have this Facebook group, why don't you
Okay.
post? Why don't we have a social audio discussion on Twitter Spaces and people can
Okay.
discuss and do all these different things? Have you thought about
True,
doing
because
that?
I do have it on Discord as well.
Or
So
yeah, you could do Discord. Yeah.
I suppose because that's a really good idea. But yeah, I'm just kind of a lone gunman that's out there, and I find people that I can chat with, and we bounce things off of each other, and that's how I learn more. I learned things that I maybe didn't know before about the law. I don't have a degree in anything, but I took a lot of the ologies like sociology, psychology, all of those, anthropology, because the mind has always been a very big thing for me. I really enjoy knowing human behavior. I come from kind of a messy family, like extended family. So
I'm
I
sorry,
kind
I'm
of
not interested in any background. You committed the
no,
crime.
I'm
I
just
don't want
saying.
to hear
So
it.
I like the brain, and
No, sorry,
so
that
I
was
kind
back
of
in our previous conversation about extenuating circumstances.
no,
That's my favorite
I
kind of
like
humor
human
when it comes
behavior.
back around.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have some interesting stuff in your past, and
Yeah, but it's
you
just
like
one of those
thinking
things
about
that
human beings and how all this can take place, and
what makes
like you
people
said,
tick.
there's a specific connection to this case because of where it was. Um,
Correct.
do you have, so you've been following this and everything else that we've discussed, if you had to, like, use a sports betting app, but it was, by the way, we need this current true crime bets,
Yes.
so we have people on trial, what are they going to get convicted of, how much time are they going to have to do? So if you were going to make a sporting bet right now but for true crime, what
Okay.
would you bet for the Megan Boswell trial?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't usually do sports bets. I'm a watcher, not a better. I'm but are you like saying for or against? Like she's gonna be found guilty, she's not gonna be found guilty? Like that? Or are you
Well,
talking about like a monetary
I would
bet? Like
say
a peripheral bet?
make different levels of bets. So yeah, completely innocent or completely guilty, and then move on
Okay.
to, well, if she is guilty, she's going to be convicted likely of these things. So
Best case scenario, she's found guilty on all 19 counts.
oh no, of course, but like just from what
Um,
I've read and had you describe,
I'm guessing
my
they're probably
guess
gonna
would
find
be
her
that
guilty on
she's
4.
going to be,
Right.
yeah, she's going to be convicted of most of these charges, and she's going to go to jail for a
Yes,
very long time.
correct. That's what I'm hoping for. That most of the charges.
But not
She might not
hoping.
all.
What do you think?
I'd like obviously tampering with a corpse. I don't know if they can change it to involuntary manslaughter. I don't know that they can change it necessarily.
Yeah, they
Like,
might be able to. There have been some cases recently that we've discussed. Was it the Marine who choked out the homeless guy on the New York City subway. He was charged with a certain, it was maybe second-degree murder or something, and the judge instructed the jury to consider a lesser charge because either they were deadlocked or the judge was just like reading the room and being like, well, he's not going to get convicted of anything unless I do this. So it might depend on the jurisdiction, but you could imagine that rather than 2 counts of felony murder, it falls down to something else. But as you mentioned, I would say child abuse, child neglect, tampering with evidence, abuse of a
I
corpse,
question whether or not
failure to report a death, multiple counts of false reporting. All those things will have to be guilty, I assume.
Right. Those for sure. I'm waiting for the murder charge, because did she know she was still alive? Was she giving her medication to make her sleep and she thought she was dead and she wasn't? You know, that changes intent. Like, did you intentionally kill her, or did you think that she was gone and you panicked and you did whatever with
that's
her?
a huge difference, because my first thought was that her daughter died, and probably absolutely her mother's fault. But there's the difference between I'm trying to kill my child versus I'm a horrible mom and my child dies. And I think that's a real difference that should be reflected in sentencing. Maybe it's not a huge difference, but it is a difference versus someone who just is nuts and I'm going to kill my daughter. Now you might argue that
I'm going to
person is
murk my
actually
daughter
so
because
nuts that
I want a life.
they need some sort of other thing going on, but there is a big difference there. Okay, so it sounds like, to wrap this up, you and I both think a vast majority of charges should be convicted on. And once again, I would encourage you, thank you for bringing this to my show, but I would encourage you to go on that Facebook group and say, let's have a discussion. At the very least, even if you just do it over on Discord, it wouldn't be recorded and you would only probably have people who are part of the group be a part of the discussion. That's all fine. And if you like that, or if you want to be a little bit more adventurous the first time around, you could do it on Twitter Spaces, where you could invite other people to learn about the case and give their perspectives. And it just, listening to you, it sounds like you've invested so much time and effort in understanding this case. I think it would be really valuable to hear other people who have done the same thing discussing their thoughts and sharing that with others. Whatever people think about Megan Boswell, it's like, that's what technology does, is it allows you to share it's weird to think of this as a hobby, but share your hobbies with others and give feedback and hear what other people are thinking.
Because there's things that I notice in the group chat, they catch that I didn't. Like an expression. I love the stenographer because she'll give the defense attorney a look every time he stands up. You can tell she's not a fan. She needs to work on her.
Is this trial just on TV, or are these like the highlights you see on the news?
Oh, you can go to YouTube and watch the whole thing.
The whole
Court
thing is
TV
just on.
is airing it. Crime and Law. Yeah. The whole thing is there. Now, depending on the platform you use, I noticed that Court TV blocks out a lot of the imagery. Like, they don't show you the onesie that she was in, or her blanket, or any of that, or the photos. The local channel, which does have the recaps you can watch, does. I'm kind of on the fence of it because I think it's almost exploitive. She was a person, and while the jury needs to see it, I don't feel like everyone does. She was a person who deserves dignity even in death. But
what do you think about, even though technically it's kind of like very American, what do you think about being able to watch this trial in real time? Like, does that cheapen it at all? I think there might be some argument that I would be, what would I say? I would be aligned with. There's an argument I think that I could be kind of on the side of, where, when someone is on trial for murdering their daughter, maybe this is something we shouldn't put on TV, even if it means that, it's a violation of our rights to watch this sort of thing. Maybe it should be a closed trial, where if you want to go watch it in person, but like to have it streaming, like, does that trivialize it at all?
I don't know if it trivializes it. I think it helps for one, it brings awareness to things because you wouldn't know about them as much if you couldn't see inside the courtroom and get that perspective. I think it gives closure to people who can't be there because the courtroom would be ungodly full. Especially this is a smaller courtroom, it's not very big. So that would be a huge limitation. I do believe that some of it should be censored because, I don't think people need to satisfy their curiosity 100% of the time, especially when it involves a small child.
Yeah,
I have a
so
problem.
graphic
Pardon?
stuff aside, so like, yeah, maybe we don't need to see pictures of a very young 15-month-old who's been dead and disposed of, but you just imagine, maybe not this crime, because maybe you're like me and would find yourself difficult to be placed in this specific courtroom. But imagine you're accused just of murder or embezzling or anything, whatever you can imagine. And
Right.
you're on TV. So if it's a high profile enough case, you're on like actual TV or you're on some sort of YouTube thing. So if you pick your nose, if you just seem like someone who looks guilty, some people just look guilty, whatever the
Right.
evidence actually says. And some people look hot and innocent, right? Like, is that
Mhm.
something that we should have to go through as Americans, that we have to worry about that sort of a thing?
I mean, look what it did for OJ. His life was horrible. I mean, one would argue, fine, that's good. His life should have been horrible, but he never had peace. He never had the same life he had before. And in some ways, I think that could be sad if, he was truly an innocent person. And
Oh,
that's what
OJ,
makes it
come on.
hard
OJ was not
because
innocent. I mean, he
I'm
murdered
just
those
saying,
people.
hypothetically,
I
using
love
a little air
hypotheticals,
bunnies,
but he done murdered those
hypothetically.
people.
Of course. But like, I'm trying to think of somebody else that I could use as an example who was accused. Okay, you know what? I'll throw her out there. I will defend Andrea Yates to the end of the earth because that woman had mental illness. She had PPD. She didn't just have, and I say just loosely.
But
She
but
didn't
but
just
so even look at that though. So someone who has problems, it sounds like you're
right.
saying that she had some problems. To have to sit there and know that there are people
I don't love it.
watching you, like, can you imagine that on
Yeah.
top of all the problems you're dealing with? And that doesn't
No.
help you in trial. I mean, the people in trial who decide are the jury. They're not
Right.
watching it on TV, so it doesn't actually help
Right.
you.
Especially with today, like you snap a screenshot and you're like, oh, look at this person. It can get really gross. Like, this is still a person. And if they're not guilty of the crime that they're accused of, because let's face it, there are a lot of people who go to trial and they are innocent, for various reasons. We've gone through this, and you look at people being let out of prison because they're, the tampering that went on, especially what used to be really prevalent before, might be still now. I don't know. That's speculative, but there are people who do go to trial and do end up being innocent. And now they're being made fun of and their pictures are being shared, and the most, they're crying, or they emotional, are they not emotional enough? It's like this no-win scenario.
No,
And
yeah, that are they
I'm
too
on the fence.
emotional or are they not emotional enough? And it's
Right.
like, I can only imagine what it's like in a courtroom being accused of a very serious crime of any nature, and then trying to think, how do
Now,
I
I will
not
say,
look like I'm happy? How do I not look
well,
like I have, I'm a robot like Mark Zuckerberg, so I don't have emotion? Like, that's not something you should have to deal with as
no,
someone
I
who's
will
on
say for
trial.
this case, right. And I will say for this case, sometimes you can see a little bit of Megan's profile, but a lot of the time she kind of has her head down or she has her hands over her face. So you can't see her. And the way that he made them angle the cameras, you can't see her. Like some cases you can see them straight on. And I don't agree with that necessarily. She has some, like, still a little bit of privacy. It might not be as much as she should have,
It's
maybe,
okay.
but
She can cover her
you
face
can't
with her
read every
hands. It's all
expression on
right.
her face.
Yeah, okay. So
Pardon?
maybe it's a little bit better for her than your average Joe or Jane, but still, like,
Right.
I think we're agreeing that even if we like the fact that courtrooms are generally open unless there's a very specific reason for them not to be. And of course, if you live in Alaska and this is taking place in Tennessee, you're not going to go to the courtroom, so it makes it
Right.
accessible for you. But I can't imagine whether I'm innocent or guilty having it was a different time. Like
Right.
you had to watch it on TV. I guess it was before I would be paying attention to this. But
10
like
months.
at
10 months.
best case scenario, you would be at home and be able to watch
Right.
it on TV, or you could watch some highlights late at night when you come home and you're watching the news or something. I mean, like if that happened
Right.
today, people would stream that on their phone, their work computer. I mean, it would be entirely different. So even like the most plastered everywhere case that we can imagine from before the age of the internet, it would be 1,000 times worse today. So it just goes back to my general thoughts that maybe this is not a good path to go down. Really quickly, Patrice has asked Nicole, did the defense ask for no cameras in the courtroom? Do you know about anything related to cameras and whether or not people question that?
I don't know. I think he might have. I'd have to go back and look because I missed part of like the beginning of day one because I was kind of upset with myself. I didn't realize the trial started until Friday. So I watched Friday live, but I had to go back and I haven't completely seen all of day 1 and 2 because like I said, they even had it on Saturday. So he might have requested, they might not even have televised that request.
Well, yeah,
I
that would
don't
have been before the trial, so we'd have to look that one
right.
up in
So I'm
some
not
sort of
100%
online.
sure. He
I
if
guess
he
the
was any
answer is
kind of
she's not aware
statement,
of it, and at the very
right,
least, if there was a request, it was not accepted because clearly
right.
the cameras are there. Reggie says, I think not only should Yates have been put to death, her husband should serve life in prison. I'm not familiar enough with that
See,
case. What do you think about that?
Andrea Yates, the reason why I kind of defend her is she actually had postpartum psychosis. She was not supposed to be alone with her children because she was very sick. She had children, one right after the other, because her husband kept impregnating her. The doctors kept saying she cannot be alone with these children. She's not safe. She kept saying she heard voices in her head telling her that she needed to save her children. He would purposefully leave her alone and he would wait and he would leave and his mother would show up to be with her while he went to work an hour, 2, 3 hours later. And so what Andrea did was she listened to the voices in her head. She drowned all of her children, chasing one down the hallway, immediately called the police and said, I just killed my children.
So, what do
She
you
could have
think
been
in
released.
your rule book? Where previously you mentioned that sometimes you don't want to know someone's psychological reasoning and stuff like that. What does that mean for her? If you could have set the sentence, would you have placed more? Don't do the crime if he can't do the time. So like lock him
Well,
behind bars. Would you have done that more for the husband than the wife? And would you have
yes.
said the wife
Yes.
shouldn't have even gone to prison at all?
She's not in prison. She's been in a mental health institution
I'm
since.
asking you.
He should have
So
gone to
if
prison
you
for life.
yeah, so you think that he should have gone to prison for life, and you think that she
Yes.
should have
I'm
finished the
okay with her being
sentence?
where she is. And actually, she could have gotten out. Like she was eligible for release and she said, no, I can do better here where I am helping others than ever I could ever do on the outside. Like she knows she's mentally ill. Even though it was postpartum, she knows she has a problem and she knows she did wrong by her babies. So being where she is, she can help other people. She doesn't want to be let out because she knows she's
If
sick and
she
she knows
gets
what she
out,
did.
should she be allowed to do TV? Should she be allowed to write books and make money about killing her children?
I don't think anyone should ever be able to make money off of their dead children.
But if
I
there
think
was
that
someone who
Casey
could, it
Anthony,
would
for
be someone
example,
who admits they have a problem and then they're like, I'm better now.
right? If they do write a book, if they do sell their story, then every bit of those profits should go towards missing and exploited children, or you know, those who are in foster care, some kind of entity that helps children. Nobody should profit like that off of the child that they participated in the death of. I just think it's gross. I don't care if they did it on purpose or not. It's icky to me. It could be better spent going to somebody that needs the money or needs the help. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to enforce that, but I understand your
Right.
reasoning there. If she did like a 60 Minutes interview, would you watch it?
No,
Really?
I won't watch Casey Anthony. I won't watch any of them that do. I wouldn't watch anything that was for Jodi Arias, who can burn in hell for all I care. I will watch them when they're dead and they can't have any kind of validation. Maybe I would if I knew that she could no longer profit off of her story, possibly. But like,
Well, in
I just
theory, if she did something like 60 Minutes, that was my idea of a place that wouldn't pay her. So it'd be more of just like
right,
a news
true,
interview.
maybe as long as she wasn't making any money off it and she was just telling her story, maybe I would listen to her specifically. I think it's not really cut and dry for me. It would really just depend on the circumstances and the person and what happened.
Stay with us, Nicole. It looks like Better Call
Okay.
Sal. Her hand is up. Do you have something to
Okay.
add on this line of thinking, Better Call Sal?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that a lot of these cases automatically have the Son of Sam laws attached to them. So whether it comes up in sentencing or not, often the Son of Sam laws come in, which is laws preventing any monies being made from a crime.
That's definitely not for what's her name? Who we were talking about her, killed her mom, but had another guy do it.
Oh, yeah.
She's making
that is
money hand over fist. She's doing lots of TV. Less now. I think she's less interesting now than she was immediately when she got out of prison. But that's not the case. I think most of the time, once you're out, unless you have like a civil judgment, like OJ was found not guilty, but he lost the civil trial and owed millions upon millions of dollars to the families of the people he murdered. But he even released a book that was like, if I did it, it was like, had I killed them, this is how I would have done it. So I'm not sure how all that works with banking and stuff, but
he was found innocent.
But what's her name killed her mom. She was found guilty and she makes money off of that. So I don't think that that's the case generally. Once you're out of prison, you can kind of do what you want.
Yeah, the likes of Darryl Brooks, he will never, if he writes anything, Darryl Brooks is the guy who killed 6 people and injured 61 when he drove through the Thanksgiving parade in Waukesha in 2021. And he will never, if he ever attempts to publish anything, funds will be redirected to his victims.
But I don't think it's automatic because we've already come up with several instances where it's not automatic.
Okay,
so I think it has to be a certain, like you're in prison. I bet if you're, like for instance, the Menendez brothers, they're in prison for killing their parents. And when they were convicted of killing their parents, they lost all their inheritance. And that was one of the reasons they got convicted, was because after they said their parents abused them and then they murdered them to protect themselves, they apparently spent a lot of money. But whatever the case, when you're convicted of killing someone, that inheritance, even if the will says all my money goes to Lee, the law prevents that. But once they get out of prison, they could write books, they could do interviews and make money. There's nothing preventing them from doing that, because once they're out of prison, they're allowed to make a living. And they've not been sued by their parents' estates that I know of. So I don't think that's generally the case at all. No.
Yeah, maybe it's only when it's stipulated. I mean, you have to be found guilty in the first place, and you'd like to think that whoever is found guilty, that they whoever is found guilty, that they don't profit from their crime. And I think that's what the Son of Sam law is. It's like when what's his name?
Yeah, I found something here from Chat GPT.
Okay.
The first Son of Sam law was enacted in 1977 after, of course, serial killer David Berkowitz was arrested. Authorities feared he could sell his story for profit, so the law required any money earned from such deals to be redirected to victims or their families. But in 1991, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the law, ruling it violated the First Amendment by restricting free speech. However, states revise their laws, so it's not just New York, but other states have them, and they focus on compensating victims rather than banning criminals from profiting. So today, many states and the federal government have versions of Son of Sam laws that redirect profits from books, movies, or interviews to victims or their families, seize earnings related to a crime to satisfy civil judgments. So that's like with OJ. So only if there's a civil judgment, and require disclosure of contracts or deals made by convicted criminals. These laws vary by states, and they generally aim to prioritize victims' rights over criminals' financial gain. I think what this means is that you probably now can do both. And if you are specifically under a civil judgment like OJ was, then it's very strict. But if you're not under civil penalty and you're out of jail, I think you can. I think what's her name? Sorry, I keep forgetting her name, but the woman who killed her mom, had a guy kill her mom, and is now out and about doing things. I mean, she's made a whole career out of it. I guess her mom's estate didn't sue her, so I guess she lucked out there. But yeah, no, I don't think it's so clear cut. I think you can make a lot of money off of crimes, especially once you're out of jail. I bet the Menendez
Um,
brothers are going to make a lot of money once they get out of jail.
Casey Anthony waited till she got the highest bidder and she sold her story to Peacock for millions. And she did that the year that Kaylee should have graduated high school. So she profited big time off of her daughter's death, but she was found not guilty. So there wasn't restricting her from doing that. And I think it's
Oh yeah,
super
yeah, yeah.
gross.
If you're found not guilty, OJ would have been in the clear. It's just that he clearly murdered those people, so everyone hated him,
I
and
mean,
then
people
he
hate Casey
lost the
Anthony.
civil judgment. So
Right.
it just depends on your exact circumstances, but some sort of blanket ban, I don't think that exists at all. Unfortunately, I would be open to it.
Yeah.
Um, I just in the US, it's like I would love living in a country where your average person could not own a gun, but in the US that'll never happen. So I just don't even pretend it's going to happen. So I would be okay with living in a country where someone who commits certain types of crimes can't make any money off of that crime even when they get out of jail. But I think in the US, because of the huge amount that we err on the side of individual rights and individual freedom, it's a very difficult to do that.
Right. And I get it. It just feels, I don't know, it feels morally wrong. I know it might not be wrong on the legal standpoint, but it just feels morally and ethically wrong. Even if she was found not to be guilty, there was enough evidence. I mean, she was guilty of something. She was guilty of lying to police. She was guilty of neglect and failing to report a death. She was found guilty of some aspects. So it feels morally and ethically wrong that she was able to make
Well,
millions
and
off of
then
selling
that
her story.
that gets into the other side of things. So if you're trying to imagine a crime that's not absolutely horrible, so we don't have to talk about another horrible crime.
Right.
Let's say you come home and you have you're taking care of your elderly parent, and they live in your house, and you come home and they're dead, and maybe you didn't take care of them as well as you should have, but you certainly didn't kill them. And then maybe you think, oh man, I spent so much money taking care of my dad, and if I don't report that he's dead, I can still get his social security benefits. There have been cases like this where people have collected,
Right. Sure.
a loved one's social security for months after they died. And then you're
Right.
found out and they put you on trial for murdering your grandfather, and you're found innocent. So your father, you're found innocent. You didn't do that. There's not enough evidence, but you did not report a death. You did commit social security fraud. I feel like you should be able to write a book about that because you didn't kill anybody. You just didn't do the right thing afterwards. Is everybody here? No one. I didn't hear a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just
Um,
making sure everybody's still here.
I muted. It that goes back to it's really case by case, and that's why they really can't write a law about it because it just depends. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the findings. There's too many variables, and like you said, at least in the U.S., it goes in. Well, it's the amendment right to freedom of speech, and you can't really take away from that. But then, how do you decide? Well, who can write a story and profit off of it, and who can't? It's not cut and dry and it's not a blanket thing. It just depends.
Reggie has tweeted OJ got off for 3 reasons. One, he was a well known football player. Two, LAPD had a history of planting evidence. Three, to my knowledge, one of the detectives called him the N word, parentheses, I think during his arrest. And then I say, being rich means you get off after murdering 2 people there. I corrected your tweet for you. Yeah, no, OJ got off because he was rich. That's all it requires usually in the United States. And I would say reverse racism. If he were a white man, he would have been convicted. This was before my time. So all I've seen is documentaries and read and stuff like that. But it just seems like it became very racial and it helped him. Call me crazy. If he had been a white guy, especially if he had been white and there'd been 2 black people when he murdered them, he would have got the chair. But the opposite, I mean, OJ was pretty guilty. I mean, he fled in a Ford Bronco, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
he was pretty guilty.
I was a kid when it happened, but yes, he did. So I thank you for listening to me. I have to go, but it was awesome being on your channel, and I'll definitely check you out again.
Nicole, yeah, great to have you. Thanks for being here. Hope to have you on again. And I would just encourage you. This was interesting, and I didn't even know this case. So I would
Yeah.
encourage you to, to try to do a little bit of this on your own, either kind of more restricted on Discord, so only people who have
Okay.
access to that Discord server can be part of that discussion, or
All right,
over
so
on
here.
Twitter Spaces. I mean, you've put a lot of time and effort into this case, and it sounds like some other cases. Like, might as well, at the very least, have some interesting debates, and if not, that maybe a little bit more, and start a podcast and see where it goes.
All right, thank you so very much.
All right, let's reset. It's News Debate. I am Lee. I'm going to go through over on stereo and finish out our messages, and then I think I'll end the show. We've been going 2 hours and about 45 minutes. Let's jump over to stereo and hear from Microphone Mike.
Yes, I do remember that, Dean, and I hope she's still rotting away in her cell. I love how they pivot away from that dirty white woman to Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. No, let's keep it on that dirty white demon.
Yeah, like I said, racism. we're talking about horrible people who committed horrible crimes, and I can't bring up R. Kelly. Like, he was like sex trafficking underage people and like peed on them. Like, see, like you can't even talk about people who clearly committed horrible crimes, and they'll be like, hey, why is he bringing up them? And please, Michael Jackson, he's white now. Come on now, come on, please. Clearly, he made the transition. All right, let's jump back over to stereo. We're going to hear from Chris.
News. Dude, I haven't talked. I wrote you on the. I literally signed on to X. I haven't been on there in 10 years, and I wrote you on there. You're the first person, and the only person I've written on X since I've been on the damn thing. God's honest truth. You can check my history. You're the only cat that I wrote. I actually haven't even signed in. I haven't even signed back in a long time to see if you even wrote me back. I don't fucking know. But I dig your show. I think it's cool. What was my other point? Oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, if you read my profile, didn't. It's enlightening, and at the same time, it's scary. Fucking insurance companies like to play down the liable like it's no fucking thing, because that actually really fucks with their math. No, we don't want people that are typically unliable or normally responsible. That doesn't help insurance rates. Fuck insurance companies. There's 17 ways I can tell you to go fuck an insurance company. Fuck them, fuck them, fuck them. I'll say it one more time, but I maybe you might cut me off if I say fuck insurance companies one more time. I like how this cat for the government calls it interesting. Now I don't know if he's being punny money wise, like he's sitting on a massive pile of fucking gold and he's waiting for it to accrue interest or not. But it's interesting when said government will steal and pilfer and quite frankly pocket that shit for themselves, put it into offshore shit. Most of it goes into offshore shit, so that if they do ever, if they do ever get quote unquote pinched, I don't have to live in this country anymore. Fuck America. You should landlock these cunts, revoke their fucking air passes, lock down their goddamn bank accounts, put them all in fucking prison. They're a bunch of thieves, period. And I 100% dig a groove, dog. I desire to be part of the frantic insanity. And you take care of yourself. You say safe travels.
Yeah, that's Chris, everybody. Chris, our how would I describe him? He always calls in. He's always a little wasted to sometimes really wasted. And he never disappoints with his creativity and his inability to stay on topic, and it's always a joy to hear from him. We were guessing one time about what he was drinking, and he did reveal that he drinks very, very cheap beer. But let it be known, so he said he had not logged back into Twitter, but I did message him back immediately when he messaged me. He joined the show as he just did over on Stereo. And I said, hey, join us over on Twitter Spaces, twitter.com/NEWZ debate, twitter.com/news debate. It's a little bit easier to have a conversation with you. And he signed into Twitter, sent me a message, and I said, hey, how you doing? And never heard back from him. So, no, Uncle Lee, I did reply, and one day maybe we'll get him over on Twitter Spaces. Let's hear from Jex again over on Stereo, and then we'll wrap up.
I meant to say State Department, not Homeland Security. It's part of the Department of State, I believe is what it is. Well, one of the things off the top of my head when it comes to the USAID stuff was about $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq. That's just one of the funny ones. And then also, now this is not necessarily USAID, but this is part of what Doge has been able to uncover. They found that $59 million from FEMA and it's official because there was some back and forth about whether they were doing this or not, but it was official that yes, $59 million did go from FEMA to illegal immigrants in New York City, and they were able to get like $700 a night hotels, and that was crazy. And then you can go on X, you could look at what all Doge has been able to uncover. They put out updates all the time. And then when it comes to the Greenland thing, I was mistaken. I didn't necessarily mean to say that they want to be United States citizens. What I should have said and what I was thinking about really is that they want to be liberated from Denmark specifically. Most of them want to be their own nation necessarily. I thought if they needed to be part of the US for that, then they would, but I guess not.
Yeah, it's always good to hear from Jex over on stereo, but the messages we just heard are from earlier in the show. He left us some messages right at the beginning when we were talking about how fast and furious Trump's executive orders have been. And I got to say, some of them make sense, and I don't necessarily disagree with them. And one of those is stopping our foreign aid because we have tens of millions of people in the United States who don't have health insurance. Even if you have health insurance in the United States, it sucks. We have, I think, 500,000 homeless around the country. So just crazy stuff that no other advanced nation has to deal with. And he said some things that were interesting, but then I thought, I don't think a lot of the stuff he just said was true. And I think he's still clearly not paying attention to what the polling is coming out of Greenland. People in Greenland do not want to be part of the United States. They may want to um, have full autonomy. I thought they were kind of autonomous already, but they may want to have full autonomy so that they're 100% their own nation. But if that means becoming part of the United States, I mean, it's very clear that people in Greenland are saying no, no, and no. So I think it just shows Jax, I think, just kind of has an agenda, and that's fine. I have an agenda, you have an agenda, but he just can't wrap his head around the fact that the facts don't match up that agenda. And USAID, he came on and he said all these things about, oh, look how much they've uncovered about USAID spending. And I said, well, give me some examples because I can't find any. And the worst he could come up with was something to do with Sesame Street in Iraq. I have no idea what that means. But if that's the worst that he could come up with, USAID doesn't sound like the worst way to spend money. But I'm still okay with shutting it down because we should be spending those millions of dollars on Americans. You know, if you go to Greenland, they're not spending whatever little money because like 3 people live in Greenland. They're not spending what little money they have on people in other countries. They're spending the money on people in Greenland. Same thing for every other country in Europe. Same thing for almost every country around the world. America is the country that we have this horrible image abroad, yet we spend so much money to help people abroad. And we should stop doing that. It's not helping us and our image anymore. I think our image abroad is just, it is what it is. It's not going to change anytime soon. Let's stop bailing people out, especially from rich countries. Like so many rich countries get so much from us, and it sucks being American. So I guess that's where I will agree with Jex and Trump is that, well, we should probably get rid of USAID. It's always good to hear from Jex, though, so no hard feelings there. I just think you're wrong on several accounts. Reggie has tweeted regarding Michael Jackson, it was clearly inappropriate for him to have kids over. I think some of the claims were bullshit from the parents to get a payout. Yeah, probably at least one family wanted a payout. Sure. When I hear Macaulay Culkin talk about him and hear about all these other things going on nowadays, I kind of lean towards maybe he didn't do anything. Yeah, Reggie maintains that he thinks Michael Jackson didn't molest any kids. I guess the way that I would phrase it is that it doesn't matter whether or not he did or he didn't, because clearly he could have, and we would have had the same evidence and just like, what the hell is this guy doing with all these kids? And no one cared. So I think it's not really that important on what he did or did not do. It's the fact that he could have been a total monster and we would have the same evidence that we have. I think that's very possible, and I will fight anyone who disagrees with that. He also could have been a very damaged individual, which I think was the case no matter what, and he just wanted to spend a bunch of time alone with kids, and no one had a problem with that, and that should not be allowed. Even back then, that shouldn't have been allowed. So I think that's the real problem is that how would you put this in a different context to show what I'm talking about? It's like, okay, you went to a party and then you drove home and then you got in an accident. Well, they didn't find you until the morning after, and by then the alcohol would be out of your system. So they're trying to say that you were drunk driving, and you go in front of the judge and you say, well, judge, I slept in my car all night. I had a broken shoulder. They didn't find me until 11 a.m. the next morning. I didn't have any beer cans with me. There's no proof that I drank. Well, you were at a party that night, right? Yes, I was. Were you drinking at the party? Yes, I was. Were you drunk? We don't know. Did you drive home and get in an accident? Yes, I did. Well, you could have gotten in an accident because you were drunk, or you could have just had bad luck and hit some ice on the way home and you got in an accident. But you drove home after you had several beers at a party. So it doesn't matter whether or not you were drunk. It was that you made a bad decision. And it doesn't matter whether or not Michael Jackson actually committed any crimes with those kids. It's the fact that it was a bad decision for him to have just impunity to do whatever he wanted and no one said anything. And he certainly could have done some of, if not all of the things he's accused of. We'll never actually know. We'll probably never know. I doubt that we'll be able to figure it out. But you know what? We should have known better. And it's a damn shame. At the very least, it tarnishes his legacy. And he's a very talented individual. And if he didn't do anything, I feel bad that there'll always be this question. But at the same time, undeniably, he did enough weird stuff that someone should have stopped him, and no one did. The law didn't. His handlers didn't. Public opinion didn't. So I guess I feel sorry for him, and then also don't at the same time. It's News Debate. I'm Lee. Let's wrap up the show. Big thanks to everybody who's been on today's show over on Stereo, also over on Twitter Spaces. If you like the show and want to support what I'm doing so I can create more content that you enjoy, would love your support over on patreon.com/NEWZ Debate. If you're a monthly Patreon supporter, you are also an instant co-host for this and every other show. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters on today's show, including Shannon and Ron and Glenn. Also, my Patreon supporters, Apostate Nate, Lola, sorry, not Shannon, Patrice. Patrice has been on the Today Show and she's still here. Shannon, I haven't heard from in a while, but she's my supporter over on patreon.com/NEWC Debate, as well as Sneaky Elbow, Natasha, Nick, MC Funk, and Bjorn, and also Glenn and Patrice. And really happy that everything is going well for our friend in Ireland, Better Call Sal, who recently, about a week ago, had a stroke, but she seems to be doing okay. Patrice, I think, has the final quote here that's worthwhile. She says, horrible parents for leaving their children alone for any length of time with anyone for any reason, referring to Michael Jackson. Yeah. I think in today's world, we're, like over medicating kids too much, but there are some kids who probably were under medicated back in the day who really could have used it. And now we've gone overboard. Now it's like, no one wants to leave their kids alone or have any questions. Oh, my son comes home and he has a bruise. Oh, he's been abused, And I guess if you're going to pay too little attention to your kids versus too much, I guess you would probably err on the side of too much. But certainly now people are being accused of crimes. Same thing with Me Too and everything else. People are being accused of crimes now that in the past, not only would people not have cared about, like 20 years ago, talk about a toxic atmosphere at work. Like, what the fuck does that mean? So I'm not condemning that people want to be treated better and that people want to pay more attention to what's going on around them and their children. But at a certain point, it just becomes a witch hunt. It's the communist Red Scare of the 1950s, but for a bunch of other things, where in the past it was just about being accused of being a communist. At least it was kind of limited to that. All right, what am I doing? Let's end the show. Big thanks to everybody. Hope to have you guys on for my next show, probably sometime next week. I'll post about that over on my Discord server. You can join by going to bit.ly/NEWZ Debate and also on Twitter at twitter.com/NEWZ Debate. Big thanks to everybody for being on today's show and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.